Hey Ernesto, hey Ernesto, hey Ernesto, hey
Yes.
Ernesto.
Yes.
So I'm assuming you're familiar with the term legacy sequel, right?
By legacy sequel, do you mean a sequel that happened good amount of time years later and it's a continuation, but almost like a reboot?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. So
Yeah.
legacy sequels have existed for a long time. There's countless examples of them. Some of the more famous ones I imagine would be like Return to Oz, which is the sequel to Wizard of Oz 1937.
Is that
Wait,
where they're wearing
1939.
roller skates?
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't roller skate. Well, yes, with the wheelies. That's one. It came out in 1986. Considerably after the 1939 version. There's also Dawn of the Dead, which was the sequel to Night of the Living Dead. Came out like 11 years later, 10, 11 years later.
Oh, that's
There's
another whole
also
generation.
Yeah, exactly. There's also The Color of Money, which is a sequel to the Hustler with Paul Newman. So legacy sequels have been around for a long time, but do you know where the term legacy sequel comes from?
Actually, I don't.
So the term legacy sequel was coined by a film journalist named Matt Singer. He coined the
Mhm.
term actually 10 years ago in 2015, and he coined it in preparation of Star Wars The Force Awakens. But if you read his original article, first of all, he calls it a legacy quel. He doesn't call it a legacy sequel, he calls it a legacy quel, which kind of rolls off the tongue more. But one of the examples that he cites in his article specifically is Tron Legacy. So, Tron Legacy is the
It's a
origin of the
legacy.
term legacy sequel.
It's in the name.
It's in the name. Isn't
Let's
that
let's
great?
actually talk about that name though. So that this is technically my second exposure to Tron. My first one being Kingdom Hearts 2, because there's a
Yeah.
level where you're playing Space Paranoids, and I didn't own the game. Wouldn't eventually play that game till I got it on PS4, probably 10, 20 years later after it released. But I was not familiar with Tron, it being very niche. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? He's like, oh, just this level where you're in a computer. And then, a year after that, they announced Legacy, and I'm like, why the Tron Legacy?
Exactly. Now let's get into that. Hey everyone, I'm Ben, your underground conductor, and welcome to Underground Cinema. Today I have with me Ernesto. Say hi to the people, Ernesto.
Greetings program.
uh, so this should be a fun review because in preparation of the new Legacy sequel from Disney, which better be good or I'm going to be very angry. I'm going to be very angry.
I know you will.
Yeah, this week we'll be talking about Tron Legacy from
So
2010.
funny you brought your disc out because I also brought my disc out.
Oh, you brought your
Very.
disc out? We both have our identity discs.
Yes, we do.
Oh, you have the Blu-ray, I have the DVD, which we'll talk about a bit
Not just
later.
the
Actually,
Blu-ray,
the
the
3D
3D
Blu-ray, right?
Blu-ray.
Yep, yep, yep. I want to talk about both of those things later. The 3D aspect, but also the different formatting, because I do want to bring that up later. But this should be a fun review. You should be my eighth guest, I think. Yeah, you're my eighth guest.
Damn,
Um,
a number after my lucky number.
right, right. Sorry, you should have been there for Rocky Horror. But just like every other guest I've had before, you've had a significant impact on how I perceive film, how I've sort of developed this concept of underground cinema. Obviously you and I went to film school together. You and I have a lot of mutual friends, many of whom have been on my channel before, like the Bailey brothers, Nicole,
And
Anthony.
Anthony.
Yep. And it's funny because I wanted to have you come on for a different movie, one of your favorites being Beverly Hills Ninja.
Yeah,
But I did not do that because I was not interested in covering Karate Kid 6. I was not interested in talking about
understandable.
Karate Kid. Yeah, I don't care. I didn't want to talk about Karate Kid 6. But we're here now talking about Tron Legacy. And I already did my recording for the original Tron a few days ago. I haven't released the video yet as of recording, but I've already done that. I'm editing the video as we speak.
Great.
But today we're talking about Tron Legacy, which before we get into the movie, I want to talk about sort of the interesting reputation that this movie has. Because a lot of people would consider this a mainstream film. I disagree with that. Because this film did not do well, like initially, which is why we didn't get another sequel to it until like now. As of recording, Tron Ares comes out in like 2 weeks.
Which is funny because it's a stacked talent, not just in front of the camera, behind the camera. You have in front of the camera Olivia Wilde, who would eventually, go on to directing. The dude himself, Jeff Bridges, and how can I forget Tron Legacy without talking about the director Joseph Kosinski, who would eventually make Tron and F1, which eventually would be the highest grossing film. So it's ironic that this is his directorial debut. It flops, and then he becomes like the one that Spielberg would say would save cinema in 2022.
Yeah, he made Top Gun Maverick. He made Oblivion with Tom Cruise, which is a very underrated sci-fi film. I remember I actually saw that movie in theaters. And he made F1 earlier this year, as you mentioned. He's a very underrated filmmaker in the modern cinema landscape. And like you said, this was his directorial debut. And it's so weird because this movie had a significant phenomena surrounding it following its release. But also, like I said, it didn't do well. I don't have the numbers on hand. I can edit them in later, but like it didn't have a good box office return, but it had a really good word of mouth. And I remember when the movie came out in 2010, I was like 12 years old. And
we were in middle school.
Yeah, we were in middle school. And when people talked about the film, like they only talked negatively about it for like maybe 2 or 3 months. After that, when the movie started going on like DVD and Blu-ray and people started watching it more, it blew up, which, proves the point that physical media saved a lot of films. But people became obsessed with it. It became a small phenomena for like 3 or 4 years.
Disney had an after-hour attraction called Electronica.
Yep, there was Flynn's Arcade as well. They opened up a couple Tron rides in different theme parks.
Which, mind you, those were about a decade later, and they opened up rides. I mean, I'm just like, ooh, let me get a flight to Orlando and ride the light cycles.
Exactly. And, there was so much supplementary content, which we will talk about later. They had comics, there was a cartoon, and I do want to talk about that once we get into the movie. But, like, there was so much hype surrounding this movie, and there's so much immersion. People were really into the aesthetic of this movie. Like, there was fashion lines, there were toys, obviously. In fact, I think, I have the Lego Ideas Tron set up there. Let me go grab it. Oh, you have the Gen 1 light cycle. Well, technically Gen 2, since this is the new grid.
Flynn himself.
Oh my god. You have Flynn? That's amazing. That's amazing. Let me see if I can let me grab it. So I have the Tron Legacy like Lego Ideas set. It has is this Clue or Rinsler?
What color is it?
I can't tell.
Red. Okay.
It's orange.
I think it's
because I know Clue is yellow.
Clue, because in the movie, Clue actually rides the light cycle against Sam.
He does, you're right. But I have Sam. This is either Clue or Rinsler. It's one of them. And here's Quorra, who is great. Quorra
with that iconic bobbed haircut.
Dude, I want to talk about that too. But
here's a tangent to that though. The same hairpiece you have for Quorra is what Irina Spalko will wear for the Lego Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull set.
You're right. And interesting trivia about that. That's Cate Blanchett's character. Interesting trivia about that, and this relates back to Disney as well. There's a character in Star Wars Rebels, the cartoon. I think she's a Moff. Like, she's not a Grand Moff. I think she's a Moff. And she's modeled after that character. She has a gray uniform. She has the black bob cut. She's modeled after Cate Blanchett's character from Indiana Jones.
That's cool, actually.
Yeah. Like, I forget the character's name. She works with Tron a lot. But she's based on Cate Blanchett's character, which is hilarious. I mean, they also, like, in Rebels, they also introduce something called the World Between Worlds, which is like a time travel, like, space. And
relating
that's also
to the
a reference to the Wills. It's related to the Wills. And that's also a reference to Indiana Jones. The World Between Worlds is the space between spaces, which John Hurt talks about. That's another legacy sequel, Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I'm surprised that's John Hurt. I thought that was Gary Oldman, because it seemed very Gary Oldman coded.
It does seem Gary Oldman coded, but no, that was John Hurt. And I do love John Hurt. we're off topic already. Point is,
Oh, we are.
Tron was a phenomenon. Yeah. Point is, Tron was a phenomenon for a couple of years. There's even like a short documentary that was on the DVD for the original Tron called The Tron Phenomena, which was basically a short promotional documentary leading up to Tron Legacy. But people got obsessed with this movie really quickly. It was almost sort of like how people became obsessed with Avatar, because they just found Tron to be so immersive. The difference was is that Avatar was successful. Um, but obviously this was a sequel that not really anyone asked for. It was a sequel to an 80s film that people liked at the time, and that was technically groundbreaking. I referenced that in my video, but no one really cared about it. And unless you grew up watching movies in the 80s, you likely didn't watch it. I mean, I know for a fact you didn't know about it until Tron Legacy came out. Neither did I. I didn't see the original Tron until I was about 16, 17 years old. Ironically, I first saw the movie in an arcade that was very similar to Flynn's arcade.
Wow.
Yeah, what happened? Yeah, it was called Arcade 2084, named after a video game called Robotron 2084. And it was basically a storage space with a private collection of a bunch of classic 80s arcade consoles. And there was an upstairs section, very similar to the upstairs section in Flynn's arcade with the couches. And they had a digital TV with a bunch of different high-def movies like downloaded on it, all from the 80s. So you could watch a bunch of stuff. And I played Tron, watching it, just sitting up there. It was awesome. Video game, movie, arcade. It made sense. It was either that or the despecialized versions of the original Star Wars trilogy, which he also had.
Come on, really? You had to pick peak over peak?
Yeah, exactly. It was peak or peak. Do I choose peak or do I choose peak but not as good as peak? You feel me?
It's so funny you say that because a few years ago, I'm going to say 2, 3 years ago, I ended up watching Tron in theaters in 35 millimeter at the Academy Museum. They were doing it for the anniversary, and it was the first time ever watching it in theaters. Like the second or third time I'd ever watch it, and watching the effects on screen, and I think they were the earliest form of digital use, right? Digital animation.
It was so Tron was the first movie to use digital effects on that scale. There had been digital effects used in movies before. The first movie to ever use CGI was the original Westworld, I think from 1973. That was the first movie to ever have CGI. But Tron was the first film to ever have digital effects done on that scale.
And seeing it on the big screen really held up, and it looked great, beautiful. I mean, my biggest complaint while watching, because I watched it on a VHS copy at home, having a VHS in 2011, it just, the black and white and the grain just looked terrible. But watching it on 35, I was like, wow, this still holds up, 30 years later.
It's very interesting, and like I talk about this in my review, Tron does hold up, primarily because I think the effects are meant to look digital. It's not meant to look photorealistic. That's the intent. But, with Tron Legacy, people know this film, people remember this film, but no one saw this film in theaters. I don't even think I saw it in theaters, and I saw every movie in theaters.
I did. I actually watched it with my dad. You know the Cerritos Mall, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays we have the Harkin Cerrito.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a long time ago, they actually had a different theater where the Dick's Sporting Goods is now. That's where they had the United Artists Theater. And I watched it with my dad a Friday night, and we watched it in 3D.
Which is how it was intended. The movie was shot in 3D.
And it was projected on film. Still, I looked back at, one thing I do, you caught me a few times do this, I always look back at the projection booth and see just, that the sea of people with the light coming on through. And I saw a black piece of thing just move, and I'm like, is that film, Dad? And he's like, yeah, that's the film. I'm shocked they still have film in this theater. Because, it was after Avatar.
Oh, yeah, because Avatar, revolutionized everything in terms of digital. That was a whole thing. But no, there was a phenomenon surrounding this movie, but it was not big when it came out. In a lot of ways, it's like a modern cult classic, this film. And, people still remember it, but, up until they announced, Tron Ares, the movie had kind of gone dormant. It feels like after 2014-ish, people sort of just stopped talking about Tron, and it was sort of relegated to physical media and, being played on TV, like on FX or something.
Cartoon spin-offs and just, anything for the niche audience.
Exactly. But, with that in mind, I feel like people have seen Tron Legacy, but we should give them the rundown on what the movie's about.
Yes, we should.
Yeah. So Tron Legacy begins with sort of it's a prologue showing the character Kevin Flynn talking to his son Sam Flynn. Kevin Flynn was obviously the main character in the original Tron, and he's telling his son about the grid. And what's interesting is that before we actually see him talking to his son, we hear his voice talking to his son, and we see lines, which we can assume are light cycles, forming a grid. And that's very similar to the opening of the original Tron. It's one of many homages that this film pays to the original Tron, because the original Tron opened up exactly the same way with that grid-like structure, which would eventually transform into like the LA city grid. But we have Kevin Flynn describing the grid to his son, and he's also describing some sort of miracle to his son. And he's also explaining the legendary hero Tron. He has little toy action figures, which that was an ad. That was an ad for toys that they were going to make.
I wish they sold that exact toy of Tron and Clue, at that time. Because I was like, the teenager. I'm like, I wanted that. Oh, it's so cool. Nope, we got the Clue and Riddler, but we didn't get Bruce Boxleitner in 2010.
Yeah, which we should have. Although it's funny because, like, you also see in the background of this scene a poster for the original Tron movie, but it's not a movie in the world, obviously. It's a video game in the world, which is funny. It reminds me a lot of another Legacy sequel, the Matrix Resurrections, which came out a few years ago, where the Matrix trilogy in that world is a video game trilogy.
Ain't that something?
It's funny. It is something. But, he's explaining Tron, he's explaining Clue. Clue stands for Codified Likeness Utility, which is a reference to the fact that Clue is made in Flynn's likeness. Although, funny enough, Clue, CLU, is also a coding language. It's a binary coding language. I don't know if that was a coincidence or if that was intentional. Obviously, there's a version of Clue in the original Tron. So I don't know if that was
technically Clue number 2.
Yeah, this is Clue 2.0. This version of Clue.
And that's because the original Clue was destroyed, after Flynn was trying to hack into the MCP.
Yeah, he was derezzed by the MCP.
Let's talk about that word, derezzed.
Derezzed. No,
I was looking it up the other day.
It's short for de-resolution. It's a concept that they came up with in the first Tron, and they even use the term derez in the first Tron. Like, at first, they call it, you will be subject to immediate de-resolution, but they just say derez for short throughout the rest of the original movie, which is kind of interesting looking at Legacy and then looking back at the original movie and seeing how many concepts were there from the beginning. It's like watching a modern Godzilla film versus like one of the original Godzilla films and seeing everything was just there from the start. The atomic breath, the roar, like the nuclear origin, it's all just there from the start.
And we now have light cycles, identity discs, and Clue.
Yep, all that was there from the start, which is incredible. But yeah, no, Clue is a coding language. I don't know if that was intentional in the original movie or not. I probably could have looked that up. I did take computer science briefly in college, but I couldn't tell you the difference between JavaScript and Boolean, so I don't know.
You know more than coding for me, because I just know like letters and language and a protocol.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, then Kevin Flynn leaves. He says to his son, I'm going to show you something cool in the next few days. I'm going to take you to the arcade tomorrow. First game's on me. He flicks him a quarter. And, you have this beautiful sentiment between father and son where, Kevin says, we're always on the same team, which I feel like would have been more emotionally effective if they had cut away from his face as soon as he said that. Show his face and then don't show the mouth flaps. Just show the son's reaction. Because he is digitally de-aged. It's one of the first instances of Disney using this technology. And to be fair, it's actually pretty good. Like, for the time, it was pretty good. It still holds up for the most part. Like, I've seen worse instances of it now, somehow.
I think this is comparable for me to Paul Walker or not de-aging, but Paul Walker showing up in Fury 7, being almost a mask of his brothers.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they clearly got a stand-in who looked sort of similar to Jeff Bridges, but it wasn't exactly right. I think Jeff Bridges came out recently and said that the effect for him in this movie looked more like Bill O'Reilly than himself.
Oh, no.
I think that's what he said. I'll have to look into it, but I think that's what Jeff Bridges said. Anyway, immediately after that, we then pivot to a montage-ish scene where it's like news companies reporting on the disappearance of Kevin Flynn. And we see a clip of him giving a speech to investors, which is meant to tie into something later in the movie. But we then hear that Sam is left alone on his own. He's now the majority shareholder of Encom. And he has a rough road ahead of him growing up without a dad and also a mom, because as we find out in this prologue as well, that his mother died. And we don't even hear her name in the movie. Like, I initially assumed that his mother was Laura, who was the love interest in the original movie, played by Cindy Morgan, because there's sort of a love triangle between her, Flynn, and Alan Bradley. But no, the mother is a different woman. In the comic,
it's touched upon in the comic a little more.
Yeah, it's expanded upon. A lot of things are expanded upon in the comic, which I want to talk about later. But the mother's name, according to the comic, is Jordan Cassis, I think. But yeah, both of his parents are gone. He lives with his grandparents, and then we fast forward 20 some odd years later. It's 2010, and he's pulling a prank on Encom Industries, leaking some of their source code.
Wait. Are we gonna skip that whole like cool moment with him on a motorcycle?
Actually, no, I do want to talk about that, because we hear the soundtrack from the start of the movie, but that moment where he's on the motorcycle, that's a good moment for a couple of reasons, because one, it establishes his proficiency with two-wheeled vehicles, which comes in handy later in the movie. But two, that was when the score from Daft Punk really takes over. Like, that was the moment in the movie where it really drew me in. There's the album, yeah. Like, Daft Punk did an amazing job on this movie. Like, their soundtrack for Tron Legacy is probably the most remembered part of the movie.
I think that's the first album I ever purchased on iTunes, and like towards the decline of their purchasing media on digital.
It's so good, and unlike a lot of other film soundtracks, and there's a lot of great film soundtracks, don't get me wrong, but a lot of film soundtracks you cannot listen to them independently of the movie. This one you can, and it's amazing. It's a great soundtrack. It truly is. Oh, and one other point I wanted to bring up. I've always liked this movie. I'm going to talk about the criticisms I have of it later, but I've always liked this movie. But I remember back, in the day when people would shit on this movie, I would always say in response, hey, say what you will, but Tron Legacy, the movie Tron Legacy, is the best music video of all time. Like, if you want to see it as like a 2-hour music video, like, it is the best one ever made.
Heck, that whole sequence, and I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but the whole sequence in the End of Line Club when, Flynn and Quorra are fighting, and just Daft Punk's like, all right, time to do what Weston used to do with the piano, but put some, some banger of a song. Let's put on D-Ras, and everyone, it's such a cool theme. It's like, all right, we know what you did there, but we can forgive it because it's the best song in the album, or the most well-known song in the album.
It's really good. But anyway, he's pulling a prank on Encom, and something I love here, and this is also in the original Tron, the production design for this movie is great. The production design and the color grading. They're great in the original Tron, and they're great in this one as well. It's reflected in both the real world and the digital world, and in the real world specifically, the color grading really stuck out to me, because it's even more harsh of a contrast between the sort of warm streets of LA as opposed to the cold corporate meeting room that the Encom executives are in. And that is a very similar contrast that you have to the original Tron, where the production design and color grading is also reflective between Encom and Dillinger's office as opposed to Flynn and his arcade. But something else I want to bring up is that the real world scenes, the sort of orange-blue color grading, the way it's lit, it reminded me a lot of In Time, with Justin Timberlake, which is one of my favorite films. It's in my top 10, and I was thinking that as I was rewatching this movie, because I haven't seen this movie in like a year. I watch it frequently. In fact, I think I might have actually seen Tron Legacy more than any other film, like if I'm thinking about it. And I've seen a lot of films multiple times. I think I might have seen this more than any other film just because of how often it played on TV.
For a minute, Tron Legacy was on my top 4 in Letterboxd, actually.
Yeah, no, it's a good movie, but like the real world scenes reminded me a lot of In Time, just aesthetically. And then I remembered that Olivia Wilde, who's in this movie, is also in Time.
Oh my
She
god,
plays
is
Justin
she the
Timberlake's
same
mom.
with the same bobbed haircut?
Yeah, she's Justin Timberlake's mom in that movie.
Oh my god. Oh, okay. She has longer hair. Okay.
Yeah. She's not the love interest. She's the mom because no one in that movie is supposed to age.
You just
Um,
die after you left. You're like, I need to actually fully watch that movie because a while ago my mom was watching it on TV. You know, she's Mexican. She'll watch it in Spanish. So I'm like, oh, it's Spanish dub. All right.
dude, it is legitimately one of my favorite films of all time. I was this close to putting it in my Letterboxd top 4. It barely got beaten out by The World's End. I love
Ooh,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, but I love In Time. It's a good movie. But yeah, it just reminded me of that aesthetically. But anyway, you know, Sam is pulling a prank on the Encom executives. He's leaking their software for free because it was intended to be for free, and he doesn't really get in too much trouble for it because you know he's the majority
He's the
shareholder.
owner.
Yeah, he gets a slap on the wrist, spends a night in jail. It's fine. But something I want to bring up is that in this scene you have a cameo, an uncredited cameo from
Of
Killian
this
Murphy.
Academy Award winning actor.
Killian Murphy, who is also in Time.
What
He's the villain in Time. Killian
Cillian
Murphy is.
Murphy's in everything. I'm convinced at this point.
He is. He is. He's the villain. But yeah, he's the villain in Time. But anyway, he plays Edward Dillinger Jr. in this movie. He's uncredited. Apparently, he agreed to be in this movie because he's a fan of the original Tron. But I want to bring this up because it sort of brings us to something interesting with the new film. And obviously, this is a review on Legacy, not Ares. Ares hasn't come out yet at time of recording. But in the new movie, it's not Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's the other guy that played Quicksilver. I'm trying to remember his name. They were
I
both
think
in
it is Aaron
Kick-Ass.
Taylor Johnson.
It's not Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's the other guy who played Quicksilver. They were both in Kick-Ass together. That's why I always mix them up.
Oh, I get you. I'm looking it up right now, actually.
Yeah, yes, please, because I'm trying to remember his name.
Evan Peters.
Yes, Evan Peters. So Evan Peters plays Julian Dillinger in Tron Ares. And I'm just left thinking to myself, who the f- is this guy? Like, where's Killian Murphy? Where's Killian Murphy?
Cillian Murphy's supposed
But
to be in his
also,
20s when we see him in Legacy. So it's like all of a sudden we have to get another guy in his 20s. So it's like, wait, 10 years have passed. What's going on?
well, Evan Peters, I think, is in like his late 30s at this point. So I'm just thinking to myself, where's Ed Dillinger Jr.? And that also leads me to ask, is Ares a sequel to Tron Legacy or not?
I hope it is.
I hope it is too, but like based on the trailers, I'm not convinced it is, even though the plot, and we're going on a tangent at this point, but the plot based on the trailers is the programs coming into the real world, which was the original concept for Tron Ascension, I believe, which was supposed to be the sequel to Legacy. The programs coming into the real world, and that was also set up in this movie, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, it's like, are you making a sequel to Legacy or not? Or is it one of those awkward situations, like with Alien Covenant, where you want to make a movie that is in more line with the original, but is still also kind of a sequel to the people who were fans of the last one? I mean, that was the problem Alien Covenant had. Because Alien Covenant, you know, when Ridley Scott made that, he was trying to cater to fans of both Alien and Prometheus. Because Prometheus was sort of critically panned, but people still liked it enough that they wanted a sequel to it, but also they were angry that it wasn't Alien. So it was that. And I'm hoping that Tron Ares is not that. Because Alien Covenant is not good. I don't like it. But back to Tron Legacy. Back to Tron Legacy. Sam goes back to his apartment. He feeds his dog, who was the same dog in the video that he punked the CEOs with. And then Alan Bradley, played by Bruce Boxleitner, shows up. And Alan says, listen, Sam, I know I've been a bad pseudo-father figure ever since your dad disappeared. Listen, I got a page. I still use a pager because it's 2010. I got a page from your father's arcade office. And maybe you should check it out. I'm here to deliver plot to you. So Sam goes to Flynn's arcade. And I want to point out that at this point, we're about 30 minutes into the recording. And Sam goes to the arcade 20 minutes into the movie. So we're doing a great job. But
Before we continue, I'm going to expand on both the pager and Alan Bradley because he actually, Sam said, "Oh, you were, it seemed like they have a good relationship to the point that he, with a good father figure, he was just very jaded after the death of the disappearance of his dad and death of his grandparents. That he's like, I don't need you, and he's like, oh, I'm here for you if you want, kid. And the pager on that hand, they're the throwaway joke. Your father told me I had to sleep with it. And it's just like that whole thing of like, I hope Flynn is still alive out there. I hope I just one day wake up and get a page. And what happens? he gets
Yep,
a page.
he gets a page. There's a
So
lot of
it's like,
subtle.
is it true?
Yeah, there's a lot of subtle character work in this movie that I really enjoy, and we'll get to that. But he goes to the arcade, and then he goes downstairs, and he starts typing on his father's like his father's touchscreen keyboard, which is in the original Tron. Dillinger uses that in the original Tron, but also Ed Jr. uses that in this movie as well. He has a little
As he's
touchscreen
shutting
keyboard.
down the program, like, oh, relax, relax.
Yeah,
Just a
exactly.
prank.
Yeah, just a prank,
But
bro.
that cool just needle drop moment when he turns on the power signal, the power light, the power box, and we hear the video games turn on. Then we hear Separate Ways, which that's the first time I'm ever hearing that Journey song as a kid. And then obviously what's there? Tron.
Yep. Which is hilarious because that is a real arcade console. I've played that console in private arcade collections. Like that's a real arcade console that Disney made.
For
And
a
if you
brief
play that,
moment too, Disney actually had it on their website so you could play it, and
yeah,
it looked great. They took it
it,
down ever since.
it does. The game itself, the console itself, has 4 mini games in it. There's they see it's the tank battle, space paranoids, light cycle run, and defeating the MCP.
Yeah, which that's exactly what they had on their website years ago.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I would recommend playing it if you get a chance to.
And
But there's a
when
secret
when does he
passage.
notice? Yeah, how does he
Yeah.
notice that there's a secret passage?
So he notices it because he takes the quarter his father gave him at the beginning of the movie 20 years earlier, sticks it in, and it just falls right out.
Just it's not working, and I was like, what? And then just the grooves on the floor. It's like, huh?
So that's a cool scene and also a good tie back to the prologue, but also it just left me to question what happened when this arcade was operational and people wanted to play that.
I argue that's his flagship game in the arcade, and it's like, oh
Yeah,
well, guys, we have to take it down, and like
they,
you
they,
can't
they
play the
say at the
game.
beginning of they say it at the beginning of the movie that Tron and Space Paranoids became the best-selling video games ever made. So there's a lot of questions I have about this movie, questions that may or may not get answered. But anyway, he discovers the secret passage. He goes downstairs. He finds his father's keyboard, and he gets shot with the Shiva laser from original Tron. And then he's back where he was, but it's different. It's because there's a digital replica of Flynn's arcade on the grid, which is amazing. So he steps outside and he sees everything around him, and it's like, oh my god, I'm on the grid. And then you have a recognizer, a space paranoid recognizer land, and the guards, the program guards, pick him up because they think he's a stray program. Then they, take him over to the arena on the grid. And this is actually something I wanted to bring up, and this is something I found out, and it's not something that's explained in the movie. So the movie leads you to believe that the grid is just this one big city. It's not. The grid is composed of several cities. It's basically set up like the Roman Empire or like the Greek Empire, where there's several city-states. And what we're seeing in this movie is the capital. And this is not in the movie at all. I had to find this out, which is an issue, which I want to get
In the
into. That
in the video game
yeah,
Tron Evolution, they do explore those separate like city states and regions. In fact, you already. I want you to say what the capital of this whole
it's
grid is,
it's called Tron City. There's
which is like,
several other
wow.
yeah, yep. There are several other cities on the grid. Like there's a city called Argon, which is in the cartoon Tron Uprising. Like there's several cities on the grid spread out. The capital is called Tron City. And I think that's hilarious because in context of this movie, that's the capital of the grid. Clue rules over it, but also Clue's a dictator. You would think that he'd rename it after himself.
Clue City just doesn't. Well, Clue City does sound pretty good actually.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyway, he gets taken over to the arena, and he gets forced to fight in what is it, Disc Wars. He gets forced to fight in Disc Wars, and he he plays some Disc Wars. And he fights against Rinsler, who's a secondary antagonist in this film of mysterious origins, unless you pay attention to the costuming. Anyway, Rinsler is about to kill Sam Flynn, who has been doing well up to this point, but then he sees a single drop of blood and recognizes that Sam is not a program. He then takes Sam up, and then, you have Clue yell. It's like, identify yourself. and he's like, "I'm not a program. My name's Sam Flynn." They get acquainted, and Sam's like, "Oh, Dad." It's like, nah, it's not your dad, kid. I'm sorry. Your daddy issues not going to get solved right now. They're going to get worse. They're going to get really bad, really quick.
The performance of Jeff Bridges in that scene, it's like, I'm not your dad, Sam,
I'm
but I'm
not your
glad to
dad.
see you.
That was good. Like, he's really good as Clue in this movie. I want to talk about Clue a lot more later. Like, but he's really good as Clue in this movie. Like, he's given it a lot. And initially, it took me out of it a bit because I watched, I rewatched both Tron and Tron Legacy this past week, and watching them back to back, you can hear that Jeff Bridges is older based on his voice. You can hear it, but when he's Clue, you sort of you hear past the fact that he has an older voice, and you just buy into the menace of the character, and I think that's impressive. He does a great job, but then they do the light cycle run, which is, I think, probably the most memorable scene in this movie. I'm not saying it's the best scene, but like I'd say probably outside of the end of Line Club fight scene, this might be the most memorable scene in the movie.
The most
It's
played in the trailers and TV spots.
Yeah, just sort of the reimagining of the light cycle, seeing the way the lines curve as opposed to just the 90-degree turns of the original Tron. The beautiful composition of it. It looks perfect. Like, there was not a single moment where my immersion was broken. It was like, oh, this is CGI. It's like, no. It's one of many things in this movie that just sort of brings you in. And it was just beautiful to watch. And just seeing the way Sam sort of outmaneuvers and figures things out, because as mentioned, he's a motorcycle rider. He knows how bikes work. And it's just so good. It's so good. But anyway, Sam and Clue are facing off, and this is where we get introduced to the female lead of the movie, Quorra. She bursts into the Coliseum and rescues Sam.
We don't know she's the female lead yet.
Yeah, we don't know that it's a subtle reveal, and when I say subtle, I mean it's very obvious that she's a woman. Like, she's wearing a shoulder-free tank top, and you can slightly see her bust, and you can hear that her voice is obscured, but you can still tell it's a feminine voice. It's very obvious that this character's female. It's just a funny trope in these movies. You have a female character wearing a mask or helmet with their voice obscured, and the male character is like, "Oh, dude, thanks for saving me."
It's sort of like watching. It's like when you're playing Metroid for the first time out of context. You're like,
"Yeah, I was about to bring up Samus."
Cool, and then the end, it's like, Samus is a girl.
Yep. Like, I was literally about to bring that up. Like, Samus is the prime example. It's like you've been playing as this character the whole game, and then she shows up in a pink thong at the end of the game. It's like, what? Woman? Huh?
This is the 80s, kid.
It was the 80s. It was the 80s. And this movie's kind of the 80s, but also kind of not the 80s. But, we get introduced to Quorra, and she takes Sam off grid. And this is where Sam gets reunited with his father. And Jeff Bridges also kills it in this scene as well. He does an amazing job in this movie. Just the emotional reunion between father and son. It's the core of the movie, obviously.
And even the soundtrack with Daft Punk, the track is called Father and Son, and it's the leitmotif of the Tron theme, but with the soft piano, boom, 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 with a bit of a harp in the background.
It's so good. It's so good. It's such a good reunion scene. And as soon as this scene occurs, we then come to understand like what Clue's true machinations are. Clue wanted to draw a new user into the system. That way he could lure Flynn out. Because the way Clue sees it, he's already perfected this system and he wants to expand his empire. He's a petty tyrant. He wants to expand his empire. What do empires do? They either expand or they die. So he wants to expand his empire, even though like there's hints of rebellion here and there. He wants to expand his empire to this real world that his creator came from. So he wanted to bring another user in to lure Flynn out. And like there's so many subtle hints of this throughout the movie. Like, this is why Clue says, "I'm not your father, Sam, but I'm very happy to see you." It's because he knew by bringing Sam in, he'd bring Flynn out.
Let's talk about the fact he wasn't trying to call Sam.
Yeah, he was trying to call Alan, the original programmer for Tron. Imagine how much of a different movie this would be if it was Bruce Boxleitner just running around the grid. It's like, what do you mean I'm in a computer? Flynn was right.
Or even, he never doubted it. He was aware there was something. I'm pretty sure after the movie, he's like, I think I think Flynn had an acid trip, but he got his answers. He's now the president. Him watching it be like, wait, my Tron is, well, I'm not going to say it yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
Well, we do
like
find out about it though, right now.
yeah, we do find out. We find out about it pretty quickly. But also, like I said, it's if you recognize the costume design in the movie, it's not that difficult to figure out. I
You
felt
know,
stupid. I didn't realize it.
it's like playing Arkham Knight, and you're like, huh, who's the Arkham Knight? He's wearing a red hood and he has armor, but I don't know who the Arkham Knight is. Why does he have it against Batman? So in this case, it's like, huh, Riddler has an interesting insignia in the middle of his suit.
Yeah, it's
Who could it
4
be,
dots
Ben?
in the
Who
shape
could it
of a
be?
T. What could that be? Huh.
Probably nothing. Probably just
Anyway,
Riddler wanted tea that day.
yeah, exactly. Anyway, we get a huge philosophy dump because apparently Flynn has a bunch of philosophy books, which which plays into the religious symbolism of both Tron and Tron Legacy and the philosophical overtones of both of these films. And then we get this dinner scene between Sam, Kevin, and Quorra, and this is where we get like the movie's exposition dump, which is interesting, but also gives us a lot of information way too late in the movie.
I think at this point we're like halfway through the film.
We're almost there, actually. Like this is like the 45 or 50-minute mark. This is where we find out all this information. It's like we're already well into the second act at this point. It's interesting. It like all the lore that we learn about in this scene is profoundly interesting. You know, how Kevin built this new system based on the old NCOM system, how he put it in his own private server, how he brought Tron in from the old system to protect this new one, making Tron the only program in this new system not made by Flynn. How the isomorphic algorithms came into being.
I was gonna say, not the only program that wasn't made by him.
So that's actually a point I want to bring up. So in the movie, they established that there's a group of programs that were not specifically designed by Flynn. They're called isomorphic algorithms, which are a real thing. They're not the thing that the movie describes, but isomorphic algorithms are a real thing. He calls them ISOs for short, and they came into existence based on the conditions of the system. They're basically code that were made by the system. If you've ever heard the phrase ghost in the machine, that's what they are.
They are the ghost in the machine.
They are the ghost in the machine. They just came into being.
It's interesting how this movie is, 10 years before we see AI as what we see today, a machine learning program. And this one, in this case, the grid was a program that somehow learned how to make other minor programs.
Exactly. And it's incredibly interesting. The ISOs as a concept, I love them in relation to Tron. They play almost no significant role in this movie beyond a character reveal, which I will talk about right now. It's revealed later on in this movie that Quorra, the character Quorra, is one of these ISOs. She's the last ISO.
She's not revealed in that moment. It's implied and intended to, but we find out towards the very end once they're on the Solar Sailor.
Yeah, the Solar Sailor. We find that out in that scene. But like that has almost no weight in the movie at all. The only significance that reveal has to the movie is the ending, which we'll get to. But she's the last ISO. But I do find the ISOs as a concept incredibly interesting. But that being said, yeah, Flynn didn't make them, but he made the system, and the system made them. So by proxy, he's still their creator, kind of.
And she even said they still, worship him like a creator. The beacon of the portal opening up was like a sign of hope, as she said.
Yeah, exactly. And he still knows how to read their code. He didn't design it personally, but he can still read it and he can still repair it. Like, he's not their personal creator, but he created the system which created them. So it's interesting. But like, we get this huge exposition dump. And, this sort of hammers home the allegory that this film plays around with. Like, Clue is a fascist. The ISOs are allegories for Jewish people.
It's funny that's what you receive that interpretation. I received it as like just refugees. Especially the way we see them show up in a very long convoy.
Yeah, and Jews have also been historically refugees several times over the last 1,000 years. But that's what they are. I mean, the term genocide, I don't think really came into existence until after the Holocaust in real life. And Jeff Bridges calls what happened to the ISOs a genocide. Like, he calls the purge of the ISOs a genocide. Because that's what it was.
And it's interesting they talk about the purge as a huge event, where Quorra will just come in and then the purge happened. And Sam's face is like, almost like, what? What?
Yeah, it's incredibly interesting. And Sam is just like, what? What happened? It's like he's sort of the fish out of water in this scenario.
Because, up until a few moments ago, he didn't think his dad existed. He thought all these tales of Tron was just a bedtime story he told him every night. And he finds out with,
Like at this
in a
point,
span of an hour
yeah,
or two, he's like, it's all real and it's still
yeah,
happening.
yeah, exactly. Like it's a shock for him to be sure. But then Flynn goes on to explain that the reason he never came home is because the portal only stays open for about 8 hours at a time, 1 millicycle. Which, assuming that he's using the prefix milli properly, that means that a cycle is 80 hours, which is interesting, assuming that he's using that correctly. But I don't know. So basically, they have a ticking clock. They have a total of 8 hours to get to the portal before it closes. And then Sam's like, "Okay, Dad, let's go. Let's do something. We have to go, escape so we can defeat Clue." And then Kevin Flynn says, "No, I'm gonna make a War Games reference, and we're gonna stay put. War Games. The only way to win is not to play."
And it's funny you say that too, because I didn't watch War Games. I still haven't, but I know the reference, shall we play a game?
Yeah.
And when I was watching The Winter Soldier, Scarlett
Yep.
Johansson is playing Black Widow. She's like, shall we play a game? I'm like, oh, is this a
Yep.
Tron
Yep.
reference? And then she's like, it's
Nope.
a War Game reference, the movie. And he's like, and Steve
I
Rogers
know.
is
I've
like, yeah,
seen
it's
it.
the movie.
Yep. I have seen War Games. It's really good. I believe it stars Matthew Broderick. It's a really good movie. I would highly recommend it. And it's sort of fitting the fact that he references that because War Games is basically an AI movie. Like that's what it is. It's an AI movie in the 80s, which is what Tron was. The original Tron. But anyways, Sam being a man who's our age, Sam's 27 in this movie. Yeah. Sam being a man who's our age is impatient, and he's like, "I'm gonna go do action." And Quorra says, "Okay, go see this program. His name is Zeus, because there's
And mind
enough
you,
Greco-Roman allegory in the movie."
she's going against her own, like, because she reveres Flynn. She, is pretty much a disciple of him in hiding as well. And she's like, I think Sam has a point. He has to do something to get out because it's the only way we can save ourselves.
Well, Sam is the only other user to ever visit this system. And users in this world are basically gods. They established that in the original Tron, that users are basically gods. And up until this point, Kevin Flynn has been the only other user in this system. So the fact that you have another user here, and this user is the son of the creator of this system, his word carries a fundamental amount of authority, even though he has no idea what the hell he's doing, ever. So I think that's a very interesting element that's at play as well. And also, it sort of plays into the naivety of Quorra's character, because Quorra, she does hold Kevin Flynn, in very high regard. And, he's a very wise man at this point. He reads Dostoevsky. You can't be dumb and read Dostoevsky. And the way she sees it is that, okay, this man is smart. This other man is the son of the man who is smart, so this man also must be smart. No. I mean, he is. Like, Sam is a smart kid. He knows computers just like his father, but he's not wise. He's smart. He's not wise.
He's a kid in his 20s. That's the best we can summarize it. He was as smart as Kevin Flynn was back in the original Tron.
Yeah, which is why we can relate to him. And it's why we can relate to his struggles. It's like, Dad, listen to me. Please, I'm an adult now. Please listen
It's so
to me.
funny because we learn a lot about, Flynn in this period where it's like, oh, you went to college? It's like CalTech. And it's like, oh, despite the movie filming in Vancouver, they're still going with it's set in LA.
Well, the original one is set in LA, and it was also shot in LA. So
And this
it
one's
made
shot in
sense.
Vancouver.
Well, it's because it's cheaper to shoot in Canada. Everyone knows that. Like, literally everyone knows that. Which is why they're currently trying to re-incentivize shooting in LA by increasing, the tax breaks.
Tax incentives.
Offering
reducing
25%
red tape
rebate,
for permits.
removing the $100 million cap. There's a bunch of Hollywood politics that we could get into. But let's get back to this movie that deals with, computer politics. Sam takes his father's light cycle to Tron City and pawns it off. Yep, and pawns it off to a random vagrant for a hood. And the insolence of this guy, the sheer hubris, giving away his father's
take your
light
dad's
cycle.
bike and sell it.
Yep. For a dirty homeless man's hood, which he gets rid of less than 10 minutes later after meeting a white woman. He literally does that.
Not just any white woman.
Yeah.
A siren.
She is the yep. Like, I cannot stress, like, even at the time when I saw this movie, I thought to myself, This is an old bike. This is older than every other light cycle we've seen so far, and you just give it away. And finding out about the context later, because I've spent the last week eating, breathing, and living everything Tron. That specific bike, that specific light cycle, is an NCOM 786. It's the first generation of light cycle ever introduced in this version of the system. So technically the second light cycle ever made after the original system. It's basically priceless on the grid. Like, if you know the context of the Tron continuity, it's basically
And it's
priceless.
very much like,
And
hey, my dad has a 1912 or whatever World War One era, a vintage era Indian Scout that was used in World War One. Here, I want your cheap coat.
Yeah, it's like giving away like a Spider Porsche, like what James Dean had, or a Duesenberg. It's like, are you serious? Are you serious right now? It's crazy. It's crazy. So he gives it away, and then he goes to the End of Line Club, where he meets Michael Sheen's character, Castor, who he is Zeus. And apparently Zeus is like this broker program who has such a lofty reputation since he's an older program as well. And he's able to basically bring people together because he knows everyone. And this is also where we get more hints about the sort of revolution that's happening in the grid, because programs are finally revolting against Clue's rule. Apparently there's separate factions fighting against Clue. And Jeff Bridges references this in the exposition scene, the fact that there's whispers of revolution, but none of it is expanded upon that well. It's sort of just touched on, and then we get to see Michael Sheen's character just chew up scenery, because he is hilarious in this movie. I also want to bring up that this scene in the End of Line Club has actually 3 separate cameos. There's the cameos from the 2 members of Daft Punk, obviously. They're the DJs in the club, which is amazing. So it's those 2. And then you also have a cameo from Steven Lisberger, who directed the original Tron. He's the bartender. Like, that's him, which is pretty great. That's pretty great, the fact that he got to be in this. He doesn't get a focusing shot the same way Daft Punk
does. The DJs get?
You see, yeah, the DJs. Like, he's in the background, but you see him. Like, the shot is clear enough that you can see him. So, it's pretty great. Anyway, Sam talks to Zeus. They make a plan, and then Zeus immediately betrays him, which, I mean, yeah.
It was, what? I had played the video game before because I had one of the other video games, and he was, when you hear so much how great he is and you play the game, like, oh, he's so cool. And watching him betray him right off the bat, it's like, what? He's just a backstabbing 2-timer?
Yeah. I mean, he's very entertaining. Zeus might be the most energetic character in this movie. He steals the show when he's on screen. He's great.
He was giving very much Johnny Depp, Mad Hatter energy.
Kinda, yeah. He's very much like an Alice in Wonderland Mad Hatter, I would say. But yeah, this is where we get the de-resed fight scene, which is outside the light cycle scene, is probably the thing that people remember most from this movie, not just because of the fight choreography, but because of the music. And then Flynn shows up, the entire environment changes, there's a woman who prays as he walks by, which plays into the religious element, which is also present in the Tron movies. And then he gets his disc stolen. Which, you need that. Like, you need that. Like, that disc.
They even say, like, when Sam is getting his disc, like, losing your disc, you will be subject to de-resolution.
Yeah, like, you can't lose that. It's very important. And this is the disc for the guy who made the grid. He even says it's the golden ticket, it's the key out. And that disc has everything that Kevin Flynn knows on it. Like, literally everything. And he designed this whole system. Like, it is the worst thing that could have possibly happened. So then...
And that's actually what he was fearing of. He's like, no, if I leave, he's going to get my disc, and it's game over, man.
Yeah, I would have just left it at home. Just leave that at home, or wear a hood that covers the disc. It's funny. It's funny. But they have an elevator accident, then they go on the Solar Sailor simulation. Then Clue gets the disc, and then we get that scene where we reveal that Quorra is an ISO. Then we go into this massive ship. And at this point in the movie, I realized, and it goes back into what we were talking about with legacy sequels, the fact that legacy sequels, while technically narrative sequels, are also soft remakes of the original film. Because this film, at this point I realized that this film is structured almost exactly like the original Tron. Like, beat for beat. Like, you have the beginning where the main character breaks into NCOM by going through that massive door, the Disney Vault door.
The big door.
Yeah, the big door.
Harry's better include that. or else it's not a Tron movie
Ares
without
does
that
have to
big
have the
door.
big door. You kind of have to have the big door, man. Maybe when the
They
military
actually,
comes in.
so I was looking into where they were shooting, the movie because all of it was shot in Vancouver, except for one scene that was shot in California that they went back to shoot there because the original Tron shot. I think it's some sort of like pharmaceutical lab that has this ridiculously huge vault door.
Yeah, that's a real door. They just found it for the original movie. Like that's a real door. So yeah, you have to have the big door in Ares. It's law. You have to have the big door. But he breaks into NCOM by going through the big door.
He
Then
goes to the lab, gets beamed in,
he gets beamed into the grid.
gets taken to a gladiator game.
He gets taken to the games, does Disc Wars, does Light Cycle Run. Then he goes off grid
Because he breaks through the stage.
Yeah. He breaks through the stadium, goes off grid. Then he
Expo
goes
dump.
Then we get an exposition dump. He goes on the Solar Sailor simulation with a female character who's a love interest. It's 3 of them on the Solar Sailor. The Solar Sailor then gets intercepted by a massive enemy ship that's being controlled by a program who was created by Flynn, because Flynn created the MCP in the first movie. He created the MCP as a chess program. Then they defeat the villain. Then they get out of the grid. It's the same plot.
The epilogue, they take control of the company again.
They take control of the company again. It's the same plot. Like,
it's a cycle.
It's a cycle. It literally is a cycle.
It's a light cycle.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It took me that long to realize it. And I think that actually plays in the movie's favor, the fact that the film is able to sort of bring you in and make you forget about the fact that they are basically covering every beat from the original movie. It's quite interesting. But once they get to the big ship, that's when Clue gives the speech, which is a reference to the speech that we see in the prologue when Flynn disappears.
Instead of in there, it's out there.
It's out there, exactly. And we also see a graphic of the world, the globe. And it's the same graphic that was in the NCOM office during their board meeting, like the exact same one. And, there's a lot of thought that was put into this movie, and I appreciate that. And this is also the scene, this is also the sequence where they reveal that Rensler is Tron. Like, this is that same sequence. Which is
let's go back and talk about that day where Flynn gets locked in and we lose Tron. It goes back to that whole expo dump where it's like, Garrett Hedlund, great performance as Sam Flynn. Like, what happened the day he left?
Yeah.
And Jeff Goldblum goes into this very PTSD, like almost
Jeff Bridges, not Jeff Goldblum. There's no buzz.
Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, go on.
We'll go in and just say, well, it was a normal day, and then all of a sudden we were ambushed. And, Tron sacrifices his life for me, and I just end up getting locked out because it takes, 1,000 cycles to keep that door open.
Yeah, exactly.
So we see the flashback played by Bruce Boxleitner as Tron.
Mm-hmm.
Also de-aged, mind you, which they don't show you a close-up face of it. You're just like, wow, okay, he's gone.
Yeah, it was pretty well done, and they did it appropriately.
And then that's when, Kevin looks at it and he's like, wait a second, that's Tron. What did you do to Tron?
Yeah. It's like, well, I actually know what they did to Tron, by the way, but we'll get to that. But that is something I want to kind of talk about, the fact that it feels like they put Tron in this movie because they felt like they had to. Because the movie is called Tron, and you can't have a movie called Tron without the character Tron.
I mean, they could have called it The Grid, but it would be just very difficult to try it to Tron.
Yeah, exactly. And Tron is just an iconic name. I mean, the character's name is Tron because he's an electronic character. Electron. But it feels like, and I can't prove this, but it feels, especially since there's no director's commentary as far as I'm aware, but it feels like what happened is that they had the character Rensler, and then they retconned him while they were writing it into Tron. Like, that's how it feels. And I like the fact that he is still in the movie. I do like that. But also it's like, you couldn't have given him a more substantial role. I mean, I love Quorra in this movie. I think Quorra is great. But you couldn't have made Quorra Tron?
I was going to say, what if they made her Tron? Like, whoa, a lady Tron.
Yeah, maybe a different version of Tron. Or it could have been de-aged Bruce Boxleitner the same way you did de-aged Clue.
It's mind you, they did de-age him for that one scene, but we don't ever see Bruce Boxleitner wear the light-up spandex.
Yeah, we don't. And like I said, to be clear, I like Quorra. I think Quorra is one of the best instances of a female action heroine in the last 15 years. But I'm just thinking about the gaps in this narrative, and I'm like, why isn't she Tron? You know?
Well, also when you look into the production history, it's like they were in so much production hell, and they were like, we just need a Tron movie. And I think the creator, funny enough, the creators are the same creators from the show Once Upon a Time on ABC. This is what they were doing concurrently. And if you've ever seen Once Upon a Time, you'll know how convoluted that story is. So the fact that the movie is a bit convoluted but still simplified is, I'm like, well, at least they did something.
They did something. Anyway, we get Clue's big Hitler speech, and we also see all the programs that he's repurposed. And this is coming way too late in the narrative, the fact that he's building an army based on repurposed programs. And the shots of the programs walking look exactly like Attack of the Clones. Like, exactly like Attack of the Clones. But anyway, they steal back Flynn's disc. Then we have a pretty awesome aerial fight scene. Like, it's pretty great.
Oh, and if you watched it in 3D, it was so cool. That's the one thing I'm like, I wish 3D TV were like somewhat around because, just watching that in theaters in 3D was like, my mind was
I
blown.
hope that they put Legacy back in theaters at some point because Tron Ares is coming out. And also, the movie turns 15 this year. It turns 15 in December.
So here's the thing. I know because me and a colleague of mine really wanted to see. They were planning to do a IMAX double feature, and even El Capitan is doing a triple feature. But for the IMAX one, in the LA area, the only theater that's showing both Tron Legacy and Tron Ares in IMAX, Big Ben. Can you guess which AMC theater is doing it?
Is it the Universal one?
I wish, or I would have gone. No, it is the Americana in Glendale. Yeah, and you're probably thinking, I didn't know they had an IMAX.
Yeah. Oh, that actually, now that you bring up IMAX, actually is something I want to talk about. So, remember earlier I said I wanted to talk about the DVD and something else? What was the other thing I wanted to talk about? I said
The movie,
DVD
3D and IMAX.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes. Okay. So, yes. So, first thing I want to bring up is that this movie was obviously shot in 3D, and there are 3D sequences in this movie, but unlike a lot of other movies, where it's like, woo, look at the camera.
Ooh, look at this. It's going to your face. Oh, it's like, no.
It's incredibly artfully done. Like, all the scenes where, like, something flies to you, they feel contextual to the narrative. So it doesn't
I think
stick
the
out.
only two instances where it feels like, all right, we have to do the 3D shot, which would be when you get beamed in, when the pixels would just fly to the screen and you see the impression of Flynn. And the first time somebody throws an identity disc and they get derez, you see the disc flying to you and the particles fly to you. Otherwise, everything, like you said, is masterfully done.
Well, like, even with those two sequences, both of those are contextual to the narrative. Him getting beamed into the computer, that's supposed to be changing worlds. And, the disc thing, yeah, you would expect that to happen. It's sort of like in Friday the 13th Part 3, where you see Jason shoot a harpoon in someone's eye. Like, that was the only shot. Yeah. That movie's shot in 3D, and it sucks, by the way. That is not a good movie, and it's not a good 3D movie either, but that was the only shot in the whole movie that actually made sense narratively. But yeah, with the 3D in this movie, it's shot in 3D, but it doesn't look like a shitty 3D movie, which I love. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the IMAX portion. So Tron Legacy was shot in IMAX. You can see the different aspect ratios. I remember you asked me this earlier this week, and I told you I'd pay attention. And yeah, the DVD preserves the aspect ratios. It preserves the changes. And that is a significant thing to bring up because not every DVD does that. Blu-rays and 4Ks do that, but DVDs are anamorphic. They typically don't preserve aspect ratio changes because it's too hard to code in.
And it baffles me for that because I'm just like, it's just a vignette change within like when when we edit it, we already know we can just max it out to a vignette, and then we'll edit it in like that. We'll then export it as that big vignette that we want to keep it in, but it'll still do the format changing. And it's like for DVD, sometimes they weren't able to do that, but Blu-ray and 4K are like, yeah, we can change the aspect ratio on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. This, though, I have the DVD for this. You have the 3D Blu-ray, I have the DVD. The DVD changes the ratios. Yep. And I only noticed that. I only noticed that because my TV has a dead pixel line. And I was able to, and I was able to notice the change because I noticed the pixel line became more noticeable when the aspect ratios were changing.
That's funny. As a kid, when I would watch anything shot in anamorphic, I would always think, is the screen just getting smaller at certain points? When you're watching in theater, you're like, did it shrink in? Like, when you watch parodies of, you know, kung fu movies, they go in a fight, it goes, and now they're going to go into fighting mode, and then it ends, and
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least. But yeah, the DVD for Tron Legacy preserves the aspect ratio changes. I think that's amazing. A lot of DVDs don't do that.
for Nolan films, for the earlier ones on DVD, they weren't able to. In fact, the big point for the Dark Knight trilogy is buy it on Blu-ray. That way you can watch it in the IMAX ratio. And then
Yeah,
later on, like, oh, buy it in 4K so you can watch it in the expanded ratio for like
yeah,
movies, I think like Dune.
yeah. Same thing. It's incredibly interesting, and only we care about it as physical media collectors. Only we care about it.
Or even as
Um,
cinephiles, aspiring filmmakers, with like we want to see it in the best way that replicates cinema. But of
mhm.
course, if they show it in the theaters, we're spending our money to watch it as it's, I always hate this phrase, but it's true, as it's intended to be viewed.
Okay, I want to get this out of the way real quick because this annoys me. There's a way movies are meant to be seen. They're intended by the filmmakers and the producers and basically every other creative person who works on the project. It's meant to be seen that way, period. That's not to say that you can't experience art in different ways. There's plenty of fan edits for different things out there that exist, and you can enjoy them. You're allowed to, and you may prefer them as well. And that's fair. That's fair. But if we're talking about the official release of something, it should be as close to the original distribution as possible. And when I say original distribution, I mean, distribution under prime conditions. Not if you go to a theater that has a broken projector and only projects the movie like 3 shades darker or something.
I've been in those type of screenings where I'm like, Jesus Christ, I did not view it in its optimal intended viewing. You can ask
Mm-hmm.
Ben when we watched a rescreening of Raiders of the Lost Ark how bad the process was.
Oh, Ben Winter?
Yes.
Oh, I'll have to talk to him about that. I am planning on doing, because Raiders turns 45 next year. I'm not going to do Raiders per se, but I'm going to do Raiders the adaptation, which is the fan film that was made by like some 12-year-olds in the 80s. It took them
Oh.
like 8 years to finish. Like,
So
and I have it. Yeah.
well, let's finish the last few lines of this film because we ended
Yeah,
at
yeah, we got
direct.
distracted. We got distracted. Also, for viewers, I did have Ben Winter on my channel as well. Him and I did Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. I'll put a thing here. Anyway, so yeah, we get the beautiful aerial battle, which is great. We get the tease that Tron is redeemed because Tron, he says himself he fights for the users.
And he remembered, he's like, Flynn.
Yep, Flynn, go. He knocks Clue out of the way, and they both fall. Clue takes Tron's jet baton and flies to the portal. Meanwhile, Tron lands in the energy water in the sea of simulation, and his lights go out, and they come back on, not as orange or red, but as white, symbolizing that he is redeemed, which they were probably going to do in like the original sequel for this, which they didn't do. But anyway, Kevin, Sam, and Quorra all make it to the portal, and Clue is there waiting for them. And we get this beautiful exchange between Jeff Bridges and Jeff Bridges. Like, I joke about that, but it is a beautiful exchange between,
It's quite literally a me versus myself moment where it's like,
yeah.
I was going to make the perfect system. Perfection doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's unknowable, it's unteachable, but it's right in front of us all the time. And you understand in the context of this movie as it develops that the perfection that he was looking for was his son. It was his son. And, he was so foolish chasing after perfection, chasing after what was right in front of him when his son was there the whole time. And, Clue is so frustrated because Clue is just a reflection of, Flynn. And Clue is just working off of the knowledge that Flynn had when Flynn created him.
And he actually says it in a line where it's like, you wouldn't know that because I wouldn't have known that when I created you.
Exactly. Clue is an amazing villain in this movie, and it's because he's basically like, he's a lost child. He was created as a reflection of a genius, and he has all the same genius as his creator, but he doesn't have the same imagination of his creator. So Clue is the logical extension of what Flynn would have become if Flynn was obsessed with perfection the way Clue was programmed to be obsessed with perfection. It's so incredibly interesting. Anyway,
You can even see the difference in character with Flynn and Clue, where Flynn is now the more warm and like very much fatherly, like the older fatherly of like, I've made mistakes and now I've learned from them. And Clue's very much that I'm in my 30s or 40s and I'm still acting brash and stupid because I haven't, emotionally grown yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's all incredibly well done. It's well acted. It's emotionally provocative. Like, Clue is just a great villain.
Really great. I just love that trope where it's like you versus yourself or you versus a dark version of yourself.
Yeah, and it's played out, but it's executed incredibly well in this movie, especially since this is the climax at this point. Anyway, Quorra...
And before we go to that finale, Quorra talks about this process that the only way Flynn can eliminate Clue is through something, basically he has to...
Oh, reintegration.
Reintegrate him.
Yeah, they do reference that.
And he might not survive that.
Yeah, they reference that earlier in the movie. It's Chekhov's gun, set up, payoff. And, this is where we get to the climax. Quorra and Flynn make it to the portal. Meanwhile, Clue is like, I'm taking your disc, Flynn. I'm going to the real world because it's what I deserve. And they did the old switcheroo, which was set up earlier.
Because at one point, Sam is going to steal the plane. And Kevin's like, Quorra, I need to talk to you about something. And that's the old...
They swapped discs. Clue gets angry, but he doesn't have the heart to kill his creator, so he just runs to the portal, which was a smart decision. Both of those things, by the way. But then that's
gratuitous 3D scene where it's like he's trying to reach out. We see like the digitized version of Jeff Bridges, and when you look at it, you're like, oh, it looks crappy, but it's meant to look like that because they're inside a computer, digitizing.
So I wanted to bring that up because I give a pass to de-age Jeff Bridges in this movie. In the grid specifically, the prologue scene with him de-aged, it would have been a lot better if they did less with it. Less is more. Like, you don't show him talk, but you see glimpses of his face and you see the back of his head talking to his son. That would have been enough.
Notice it's also shot at night with dim lighting. They also knew like we're going to be really struggling to make this look realistic in daylight. If you ever notice, most of the de-aging is typically done in the shade, indoors, or like in the dark,
which was a smart decision. That was a very smart decision on their part. But with those prologue scenes, it looks iffy. But in the computer world, it's fine. Clue is a digital creation, and he was also one of the first programs created in this new version of the grid. And also, Tron, who was de-aged in this movie as well, he was from the original grid. He was from the original system. He wasn't from this one. So the fact that they're both digital, it makes perfect sense in this movie, in the grid specifically. When it comes to like the real world scenes, I'll take them or leave them. I think they could have been done slightly better. But like the digital scenes, it's fine. And, in that final scene where Clue is reaching towards the screen, reaching towards Sam and Quorra, I can give that a pass because he's literally getting reintegrated at that point. But yeah, you get the reintegration of Clue into Flynn. It's the duality of self. And, this is also something I wanted to bring up earlier. So if you recall, during the exposition dump scene halfway through the movie, Flynn is playing with a gold trinket, which he sets down next to a silver trinket. That looks exactly the same. That's him and Clue. And when Clue goes to Flynn's hideout later in the movie, 10 or 20 minutes later, he picks up the silver trinket, confirming that.
He recognizes the two of them.
Yeah.
And because Flynn is Clue and Clue is Flynn, he's like, it angers him knowing that he knows what it means. And he has that great crash out, throw the table, and then, he stops, recollects himself as, we're leaving.
Yeah, because he can't be seen as weak or emotionally unstable, even though he is. God, Clue is so good. Anyway, Clue dies. Flynn presumably dies. I say presumably because we see him in the trailer for Tron Ares.
Surprise, Disney.
Maybe he's a digitized version of himself.
My take on it is that much like how energy isn't lost, it's just converted. Maybe, Flynn as a whole, becomes raw code and he just, with the, because at the very end, we see Sam downloads that whole system into his hard drive, carries it with him. So I'm like, maybe he rebuilds that grid, very much how Kevin would do, recreate it and just, rebuild his father in some weird way.
I think you're probably right, especially since this grid in this new movie looks different. And based on the scenes that we've seen in the trailer, it looks aesthetically very similar to the original Tron, where all the skin tones are grayed out like black and white, which is a very interesting aesthetic choice, which I may or may not be doing in my latest Tron video. Anyway, we go to the real world. Flynn talks to Alan, says he's going to take back the company. Then he goes outside, sees that Quorra is there. And Quorra being there is actually a big deal because Flynn says in the movie that he wanted to share his miracle, the ISOs, with the world. Yeah, like digital algorithmic DNA, that was game changing. And the fact that Quorra is in the real world, there's so many implications that the movie doesn't give us, that's one of the questions in the movie that I'm glad we didn't get answered. I'm glad we didn't get that answer in this movie. Like, what is Quorra in this real world? Is she flesh and blood, or is she
how does she exist?
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's a great mystery.
That's a great mystery. It's the only thing in the movie that I'm fine with not having the answer to. But then
I'm glad we don't get like a last minute like explanation from Bruce or Alan, who's like, "Oh, interesting. You somehow printed DNA via code," and it's like, no, we don't need to hear that. We can hear it in the sequel.
It would have ruined the movie. It would have ruined the movie. Bad. But like then they ride off together on a bike, and we get that beautiful ending that you and I talked about earlier this week, where it's just her nestled on his back. She sees the sunrise, which is what she's always wanted to see based on the books that she's read, based on the conversation that she and Flynn had when they were on the way to the portal.
Like, what did the sunlight look like? Sunrise look like? And he's like warm, beautiful. Like it's like that hinting like there may be a romance, but also they're being playful. There's no forced romance.
There's no forced romance, and that's another great thing about this ending and this movie. There's no kiss. There's no like blah 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 this blah 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 that, because even though it's very clear that they were building up to a romantic element, it's also vague enough that it creates ambiguity with their characters' relationships, because they also have sort of a sibling dynamic since she was basically raised by Flynn.
She's the adopted daughter and the surrogate daughter in place of Sam being his kid. He can't have his kid, so he'll bestow his knowledge on this isomorphic program that is basically, in a sense, his creation.
Exactly. And that was another thing that he saw as perfection. The fact that ISO is just manifested out of nothing. So in that sense,
look at his living quarters. It's so minimalist. It's just furniture, books, and the Reversi board game they have there. And as a kid, I'm like, how could someone live like that? As an adult, I'm like, if you're at mind and you're a simple person, then he just pretty much found perfection. You don't need much.
Yeah, he did. It's a simple, pious life. And, the fact that he does take on, like, Quorra as an adopted daughter, as a surrogate daughter, it shows what his desire was with the ISOs. He saw his creation, his son, as perfection, but he didn't write his son the way he wrote code. His son came into being the same way the ISOs came into being. And Quorra, as the last ISO, is like that. She was birthed from the grid which he created, but he didn't personally, like, edit her to like program her for a specific purpose. So in that sense,
and Flynn,
as an ISO, yeah.
And Sam was birthed, from as a result of him and his wife. But then not having a hand in personally raising him, in the formative years of teenagers, when you really start to create your own personality. Sam gets to be raised by his grandparents, then he becomes somewhat orphaned for a brief period before just becoming his own, like, daring, mid-20 something that eventually is what Kevin Flynn will see. It's like, oh wow, you've really grown.
Yeah, exactly. It's all incredibly interesting and plays a lot into the themes of perfection, but also like how life by itself is not perfect. And the ISOs are representative of that, which is why I wish they were integrated into this movie better. But it's a beautiful ending. And she just nestles in on his back, as the sun rises, and the movie cuts out, and that's the end of Tron Legacy.
And it's so funny because before watching the movie, I was talking like a colleague of mine who were planning to see the movie together the night before it releases in IMAX. But I was rewatching this clip because I'm just like, this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's just a great ending. It's just pure vibes. And recently, having gotten a motorcycle, I'm just like, man, riding into the sunset, beautiful cityscape with like just that feeling of happiness. Seeing the sunlight for the first time.
Simple happiness, like nice pretty girl on your back, Is she your sister? Is she going to be your girlfriend? We don't know. We'll find out in the
It's
next
so
movie.
funny you say that too, because on that comment, someone's like, as
Oh my
someone who, someone had commented on the YouTube video, as someone who rides a motorcycle, no bugs in your face. You know, the going at a good speed, having a beautiful girl in the back. It's like every motorcyclist's dream.
Mm-hmm. It's very well done. But yeah, Tron Legacy. I like this movie. I used to
I
love
do
this movie,
too.
but now, yeah, I used to love this movie, but now I just really like it. And I
I'll put it
remember,
out there wholeheartedly on the internet. I love this movie. I'm not going to put it up there with Jurassic Park, The Dark Knight. Well, maybe, or even Chunking Express, but it
Mhm.
is up there. In fact, on my letterbox, I have a list called "Getting to Know Me." That's definitely on there, and I have a whole paragraph talking about why I love this movie.
not like I think this movie's severely underrated. I think that the people who ripped on it when it came out were just completely out of their depth. And also, I will say this. I'll say this for the internet, for anyone who's still listening after an hour and 30 minutes of us going on tangents. This movie is better than the original Tron. Period.
I agree.
I have a lot of I have
It's tough to say, but it is because without the original, it's
Mhm.
wouldn't exist. But it's one of my favorite video games of all time, Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I say it's better than the original Zelda, and it's like
Mhm.
how can you say that without Zelda? You're not gonna have Ocarina of Time, yes, but as you're about to say, it builds upon it and even
it
modernizes it.
it does build upon it. And I have nothing but respect for the original Tron. I have nothing but respect for Steven Lisberger and his team for making that movie. But I talked about this in my Tron review. It's a meandering film. It has a terrible pace. It's so overtly slow. I'm incredibly impressed with the technical aspects of the movie,
And
but
that ending is really rushed too.
the ending is very rushed. It's a clunky movie. And, I do not blame anyone who made that movie for it turning out that way because they had no idea what they were doing. Like, I cannot even begin to articulate how complicated it was to make that movie. And the fact that it came out in any sort of shape was a miracle to everyone who made it. So I can't judge it too harshly, but it's a flawed film. I like it. I like the original Tron. I respect it a lot, but Tron Legacy is better. And, you and I were in our late 20s. We're young people, and people will say, well, blah blah blah, you just like it because it's newer and shinier, blah blah blah. It's like, no, there are films that were made in the past that have sequels now that are terrible. the
In
the
your opinion, Star Wars?
the original Star Wars trilogy is better than the sequel trilogy, period. Terminators 1 and 2 are better than 3 through 6, period. Even though I have a soft spot for 3. I think 3 is actually underrated. But
I'm
Terminators
looking
1
at
and
my
2 are
film
better than 3.
collection to see what can I point out. Okay, you'll agree with this. Jurassic Park, The Lost World, better than Jurassic World. Even though I do enjoy Jurassic World, you, me, and a mutual friend of ours, David, have gotten into an argument where I'm trying to defend was it Fallen Kingdom,
Fallen Kingdom is bad.
but
I
having recognized that it's a bad movie but still enjoyable, and you're like, no, it's just outright bad.
It's bad. I hated it. I hated it when I was watching it. I hate it now. I hate the Jurassic Park franchise, but I love the first two movies. Like Jurassic Park 1 and the Lost World Jurassic Park are great. Obviously, Jurassic Park 1 is the better film. It's perfect, but like Lost World is an underrated film. The rest of them are terrible. They're
So putting
bad.
that context into it, it's like, of course, we love Tron Legacy more than Tron, and we do have respect
Tron
for it. And
Legacy,
it's not because it's the new shiny cool movie that's edgy. It's why?
it's a technically better made film and it has a stronger emotional core. It's fundamentally a father-son story. It's a story about a son trying to rescue his father. It's Pinocchio. It's a son trying to rescue his father from the belly of the whale. Like
And it's
that's what
so
it
funny
is.
you bring up father and son because I watched this movie with my dad, and I don't want to trauma dump on this. My dad and I have an interesting relationship, but he and I used to watch movies together, and he told me one day because he knew I was really excited about watching the movie. It was a rainy like Friday day, like, hey, you want to go see Tron? And I'm like, heck yeah, let's do it. And it was pouring rain. He was driving his junk of a car, and we pull up into Cerritos to go watch it, and it's one of my happy moments with my dad that like I can say like I can say a lot of stuff about my dad. You've heard it, but he did his best. He may not be the best, but he did some stuff that I'm like, you're not a bad man.
I think
I'm never gonna say it to his face though.
well, it's one of those things, and this goes into like just the fundamental complexity of human beings and how we're perfect because we're imperfect. Parents do their best, and we're getting to an age where we can finally understand like the burdens that our parents had to suffer raising us, and the burdens of
Especially because
adult.
both our parents are immigrants. I mean, your dad
Mhm.
immigrated, my parents both immigrated, so it's like we're both now
Yeah,
being like, oh man, you guys had a different, young adult life than we do.
yeah, and we're finally coming to the understanding that our parents are people. They have dreams, aspirations, and they had to build their lives the same way we're building our lives. And this is just this is the name of the game. You know, you will have kids. Most people will have kids. Most likely, those kids will resent you because you're unable to relate to them because you're no longer at that young, optimistic age.
As
It's
Abe
a thing.
Simpson told Homer, it's like I knew
Yep.
what was it, but then it
It
changed and it
changed,
became
and
scary.
it will happen to you too.
It'll
And that's
happen to
true.
you.
That's true. Being a parent is a thankless job, and your kids will always grow to hate you. And then when they eventually become parents, they'll understand. Oh, this is what happened.
Oh, it's gonna
It's
be ultimate. I told you so.
yeah, it's just the nature of things. But this movie is a stronger film. The production design is outstanding. I would say the special effects are top notch. I
I
wouldn't
don't know.
say that
I don't know if it was nominated for an Oscar that year or not.
it wouldn't surprise me because the original Tron was also snubbed for an Oscar because the Academy thought that Disney cheated by using computer effects.
Okay, you're gonna laugh at this. It was nominated for Best Sound Editing only, and it didn't even win that. It
Which who won
lost.
that?
Let me look this up. I'm right now looking at it. Oh, you know what? This makes sense. It lost to Inception.
Actually, that does make sense.
That's fine. It was nominated against Toy Story 3, True Grit, and Unstoppable. Who was VFX then?
Oh,
Inception.
I remember Unstoppable. I remember seeing that in theaters. That was Chris Pine and
I don't
Denzel
think
Washington.
I don't think I've ever heard of it.
It's a good movie. Yeah, it was Chris Pine, Denzel Washington. It was about them trying to stop a train that derailed. I think it came out the same weekend as Megamind.
Oh, now I remember, yes. But
Yeah,
visual effects,
I
Inception
saw it
had
in theaters.
won.
Yeah.
Nominated against Alice in Wonderland, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, Hereafter. Oh, I remember Hereafter. And Iron Man 2. So it was a pretty stacked year when it comes to the technicals.
It was 2010. It was 2010. But
But even the cinematography itself is great. I mean, I don't
it
I think it was shot on, I don't know if it was on film or digital. It was just
it looks so good. And like
it
I said,
looked
the special
great.
effects are top notch. I wouldn't say it's better than the original Tron because it's comparing apples to oranges. It's comparing apple. It's not a fair comparison. It's apples to oranges because the original
In
Tron was
fact,
groundbreaking.
the original Tron, it did keying with retro reflection. And for the animation part, they couldn't actually design the, if you look at the original light cycles, it actually is a very simple design. It's using like ellipses, circles, cones, and everything. And they had to use all these pre-made shapes and just move them. So it
Yeah,
was basically a mathematic.
yeah, exactly. Like it was incredibly complicated. I couldn't even begin to articulate how they could have done it, even though I watched literally almost all the special features for it. Like
Corridor
it is.
Digital even makes a joke where it's like, they had to look at the numbers and see that. And they're like, so if they were look at the sequence, they would pull up the numbers and someone would look and be like, yeah, it actually looks great. Like mathematically, it's fine. Like I'm like,
Yeah,
I can't
but
even
it
imagine.
didn't.
Like math was my highest thing in high school and middle school. And I'm like, wait, you're telling me I have to look at coordinates and then be like, okay, yeah, I can see that moving.
They had to manually input like 100 coordinates for every second of a light cycle like running.
I think a minute had to be basically rendered throughout a whole 24-hour cycle.
It was 600. It was 600 inputs for one light cycle for a minute. It was a lot. So it's comparing apples to oranges. I'm not going to sit here and say that one has better special effects than the other, but Tron Legacy has a better emotional core than the original Tron, even though it has the same plot beats. It has a tighter plot than the original Tron. I already talked about the acting, even though I think the acting in the original film is also pretty good. It utilizes its characters better. But what I will say is that the original Tron has better world building than Tron Legacy.
We see a
The
lot
way,
more of NCOM in the buildings going on. It's a
not
whole
just that,
self-contained story.
it's a self-contained story, but not just that, in the digital world as well. So I remember rewatching Tron Legacy last year. I rewatched it twice last year, and to be fair, I watched it back to back with the original Tron, and I watched both movies drunk. And one, yeah,
That's a trip right there.
yeah, it was. But when I got to Tron Legacy, I was like, oh yeah, I like Tron Legacy, and I hadn't seen it in a couple of years, even though I've seen it so many times. And I was
Even
watching
though
it, I'm
it's
like,
in your
why did we?
collection.
It's in my collection as well. But I was sitting there watching it, and obviously I was drunk, and I was like, why doesn't this feel right? And I thought it was because I was drunk. Because I was like, why is everything moving so quickly, and why doesn't this feel right? And I was very confused. And rewatching it now to review this, it finally dawned on me what the issue was with this movie. It's because like the world of the grid brings you in. The production design, both in the real world and in the digital world, are fantastic. The world of the grid is just so immersive. It's like the Avatar effect. I think I referenced that earlier. The fact that the world of Pandora is so immersive that it distracted people from the fact that Avatar is basically
Animated movie.
Yeah, it's an animated movie that's Dances with Wolves, Pocahontas, and Ferngully. It's the same thing with Tron Legacy, and both movies were shot in 3D, but it's the same thing with Tron Legacy. The world visually is so immersive that it distracted people from the fact that the world building is shallow. Like I said, there was the exposition dump in the middle that just explains what the ISOs are, how Clue took power, there's hints of a revolution happening, and all of it is all like, what is happening? Can we take like a minute to establish things? Like when Sam gets to the grid, apparently there's rumors floating around of the users returning. And I'm like, what is happening? Can we see
like the users returning?
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot.
And even if you had rewatched the original movie beforehand, there's some stuff where you're like, huh? Like this wasn't in the original movie or what? Like, huh?
Yeah, it's a lot. And it feels like this was a movie that was way too ambitious for itself. And it probably would have benefited from more sequels, like direct sequels, not what they're doing now.
Or in this case, we ended up with a prequel spin-off and various media tying into it, such as the comics and the video games.
Well, that's what I wanted to get into. So, like I said, I've spent the last few days just digesting everything Tron. And
it's funny that you didn't actually know there was a comic beforehand. I was like, oh, are you reading the comic? You're like, there was a comic. Yeah. I know there was a cartoon show.
Yeah, so I rewatched the cartoon Tron Uprising because I remember when the cartoon came out in 2012, and I watched it actually when it was coming out, but it got canceled after one season because no one cares about Tron, unfortunately. And I was like, okay, let me rewatch it because I remember it was a prequel to this movie, and I don't think I ever finished it.
Really?
Yeah, it's a 19 episode season, and going back to rewatch it, I was like, okay, I remember a lot of this, but once I got to like I think episode 11 or 12, I was like, I don't remember any of this. Once I got to like over the halfway point of the season, I was like, this is all new to me. I do not remember any of this.
For me, it was interesting. A show I couldn't watch because I didn't have cable. And in fact, this was the early 2010s. Streaming wasn't really a thing. I mean, you had Hulu, but that was not too well known. Disney would show a lot of their episodes on their website, but if you didn't watch episode 1 when it dropped about a month within, they would remove it. And I wasn't really into like torrenting sites, so I was like, well, I guess I'm not watching Tron. Now we live in such a great age, even though, the big companies are trying to remove, where we have just about everything at our fingertips, well, to an extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I go on Disney Plus now, I can watch Tron Uprising, or I could watch all the other 2 movies.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you could. And that's what I did with Uprising. I went to Disney Plus because even though I own the movies on DVD, I don't own the cartoon on DVD. So I went to Disney Plus and I rewatched all of the cartoon over the last 3 days. I finished it today. I finished Tron Uprising today. And then after I finished Tron Uprising, I read Tron Betrayal. It was 107 pages. I just blew through it. And then after that, I rewatched Legacy to get full context. And you need all that context in order for the movie to make complete sense. The movie does work by itself. Fortunately, it's a Legacy sequel. It's designed to work by itself. But if you want actual understanding of the world-building mechanics in the movie, you need the supplementary content. And it's kind of unfortunate. I mean, a lot of people would compare that to like Star Wars The Clone Wars, the 3D animated series. A lot of people say that, oh my god, that show is amazing. It makes the prequels so much better. The prequels work by themselves as movies. You may not like them, but it is a cohesive story that works by itself. The animated series, which is amazing, I love the 3D Clone Wars, it adds a lot to the prequels, but it does not replace them. It's additive, and it is supplementary content, but it doesn't fill in a gap that exists in those movies. if you actually pay attention to the prequels, they make sense. You may not like them, but like it's a cohesive story.
And
With
having
Tron,
rewatched, you know,
Mhm.
Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith, in the past 2 years, I was just like, wow, like George Lucas had the ideas in there. It's just unfortunate that we were bogged down by his dialogue.
Yeah, the dialogue is bad, and it's unfortunate that we also live in a world where people think that bad dialogue equals bad writing. That's different. Like
Man, they wait
like
until
bad
they
dialogue and
read Shakespeare.
bad dialogue and bad writing are different things. Like you can have an amazingly written plot with the most cohesive elements that exist, payoffs, follow-throughs, Chekhov's gun being paid off, all that, but the dialogue could be crap. Like I was rewatching Gremlins last year for Christmas, and I forgot how bad the dialogue is in that movie. The plot is amazing. It is a really good plot. I mean, there's some extraneous elements like the dad going to a robotics convention, but the plot for Gremlins is pretty yeah.
Dude, I haven't watched that movie since I was a kid. Working at Warner Brothers now, we talk about Gremlins because it's shot on the lot. But I'm just like, oh wow, I forget there are out-of-pocket sequences.
Yeah, there's out of pocket sequences that don't make sense. But for the most part, it's a cohesive story and it makes sense. It's just that the dialogue sucks, which is kind of shocking because the movie was directed by Joe Dante, but it was written by Chris Columbus, who wrote and
What?
directed Mrs. Doubtfire.
And Harry Potter.
Yeah, he
Hello,
directed the first two Harry
Home
Potter
Alone.
movies. Yeah, and the first two Home Alone movies. He's a good filmmaker and he knows what he's doing. So hearing that he wrote Gremlins, the plot is good, but
Well,
the
we
dialogue is
can probably
terrible.
forgive it that it was his early work. I mean, we can compare. We can do the same thing for Joseph Kosinski. I'm always mispronouncing his last name.
I can give a pass because you're right. This was his directorial debut, and it feels like the movie it was an ambitious project. It feels like he was a fan of the original Tron, and he wanted to expand the ideas from the original
Well, in
Tron. And I
fact,
think he
I
did.
don't even. He didn't write it actually. It was. I'm looking at the. I can't. Oh God, just gonna go in the Wikipedia.
You know,
It was
I can
written
read it.
by Edward Kitsis and Adam Horowitz, which again they did Once Upon a Time and Lost, which again convoluted, heavy, shows that you were, if you didn't watch every episode, you're like, what the hell did I miss?
Hearing that one of them did Lost makes a lot of sense because yeah, that would make sense. But the movie is a little too ambitious. The ideas are good, and it does what any good sequel should do. It expands on the ideas of the original, like all the religious allegory, like the Greco-Roman inspiration, the sort of fantasy-esque narrative, and it covers all the same plot beats, obviously. Like it does everything a good sequel should do, but the world building falls flat, and it shouldn't because it's inherently interesting. The villain in the first movie is the MCP, who was created by Flynn. The villain in this movie is Clue, also
Also
Clue
created by Flynn.
2.0, also created by Flynn. And that parallel, the fact that Flynn created his own worst nightmares, it makes so much sense. And the fact that Clue has created a fascist dictatorship the same way the MCP created like a pseudo-fascist empire, a medieval style fascist empire, it's a perfect parallel. It makes perfect sense. But like there's so many elements like the rebellion aspect in the movie that feel tacked on. It feels like they established that there's a rebellion happening in this world because they had to. Because they did it because they had to.
They did it
Um,
because they were developing a TV series that was about a uprising rebellion.
like if you're establishing a story that's about an authoritarian dictatorship, then by necessity you need to have a rebellion in that narrative. It's just a natural opposing force that would emerge from a storyline like that. So it feels like
It's so
they
funny you
did
say
it.
this.
Mm-hmm.
So you took the intro theory of cinema in college, right?
The what?
In, film theory, intro to film
Oh,
theory classics, right?
yes, I did.
Did you ever watch a movie in that class called Rome Open City?
No, I did not.
My professor, he showed us that movie, and it's funny because the movie, it's about Rome after the Allies had finally invaded Italy. Mussolini said, "Okay, Rome's an open city. We are just gonna like run away," which leads them to him getting killed by the resistance. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a slice of life movie about the people living in Rome, and it's just like on the surface, you're like, it's such a boring like life they're living, as the war's going on. There is a subplot that is purposely skirted away from the main action, where the
Mm-hmm.
kids are part of a rebellion. They're bombing, the fascists in Mussolini's control. And my classmate at the time, Michael, which I hope he's watching because I think about this every so often. My classmate passes me a note and he's like, wait, there's a backstory about kids being in the rebellion and we're not following that. That would be a better story. And, we brought it up to the professor and he's like, yeah, because you're following the life of an average Italian person. They wouldn't know that kids are rebelling. They're just gonna be like, where are you guys? Like, you were so in trouble. If you you better hope you're dead because I'm now going to whoop you. It's Italy in the
Yeah,
1940s.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's interesting. And you're right, but like what you're describing, I didn't watch that film, but it feels like that film was deliberately structured like that.
This one wasn't.
Yeah,
For
this one
Tron,
was not.
it wasn't.
Tron Legacy was not. And this brings me to the supplementary material. So I can explain based on the material I've consumed, and to be fair, there's more comics, obviously, and there's the video game, which I had not played. You have, though. So you could probably fill in the gaps.
And it's
But
funny because the video game and the comics are the same story told from two different perspectives. Video game, you're playing as this character called Anon, another program Flynn created to be like, hey, you're going to supervise the system for me, you'll report to me what's going on. And that's
Mhm.
when he finds out, hey, Clue's doing this, ISOs are being killed off. Unfortunately, Anon gets killed at the very end, rescuing Quorra. And Flynn runs into him and says, oh my God, Anon, you're dead. Who are you? Oh, I'm Quorra, I'm an ISO. Oh, well, welcome.
Okay, that makes sense. That's actually quite interesting.
But in the comics, we get more context about what
We
happened
get more context.
outside of the grid from Flynn's perspective.
So yeah, I'm gonna go over the cartoon first, and then the comic to fill in the context. So the rebellion is sort of explored in its inception in this cartoon. So the cartoon Tron Uprising, it came out in 2012, 2 years after the movie. It centers around a character named Beck, who's voiced by Elijah Wood.
Really?
Yes.
I forgot that little detail. Holy crap.
The show had a stacked cast. Like Elijah Wood voices Beck. They brought back Bruce Boxleitner to voice Tron in that show. The villain, General Tessler, is voiced by Lance Hendrickson from, Aliens and Pumpkinhead and a bunch of other stuff. But he plays General Tessler in Tron Uprising. I think Mandy Moore is in the show. I think Aaron Paul plays a secondary villain in the show. Yeah, so it's a good show.
And this is a Disney
it's a
XD
decent show.
show.
It's 19 episodes. It came out around the same time as Motor City. It was around the same time as that XD cartoon Motor City, which was about kids living underneath Detroit, like in the future. It was a pretty good show. Also one season. But anyway, so Tron Uprising, it was 19 episodes. It's a decent show. About half the episodes are filler. But there's a lot of nuance to the character work in the show. Like I said, it has a stacked cast. And for better or worse, even though half the episodes are filler, every episode has at least one kernel of world building that helps expand the world of this version of the grid. And this is also where we find out that there's different cities on the grid. The show takes place in the city of Argonne. The character Beck becomes a renegade in Argonne. He's one of the first people to rebel against Clue and his dictatorship. Apparently, the show, according to the Tron wiki, takes place in 1990, so a year after Flynn gets trapped, which makes me question about how the timeline of how the grid works and how programs perceive time, because in the show, it feels like it's been like a generation since Clue took over, and he's finally gotten to expand to this city of Argonne, his empire. But it's only been like a year, so I don't know. But
And it's funny because when the show came out, I mean, when I heard about it, I thought it was like a follow-up or sequel or something. I had never, it wasn't until a few years ago I looked into it and I'm like, it's a prequel to the show and happened right after he gets trapped. What?
yeah, exactly. So Beck, he decides to become a renegade, and after he becomes a renegade, he meets Tron. So Tron becomes his mentor. And Tron had survived his encounter with Clue, the encounter that we see in flashbacks in this movie. And he manages to escape to this far-off mountain, which he keeps as a base, similar to how Flynn has his base near Tron City. Tron has his own base outside of Argonne. Anyway, over the course of the show, they explain slowly how the rebellion starts and how Tron survived. So they reference in the movie that there's rebel factions that are fighting against Clue. It's implied, based on what we know about the show, because the show only lasted one season, that Beck started the first faction, the faction in Argonne, and that other cities followed suit. That's what you can assume based on the context we're given in the show, which was only one season. He sort of got the rebellion going, and he was personally trained by Tron. Meanwhile, how Tron survived, it's actually quite interesting. So after Clue betrayed Flynn, he strikes Tron, you see him do that, but he doesn't kill Tron, because Tron is too useful of a program. So what he does is that he gives Tron to another program named Dyson, who was actually one of Tron's allies, but betrayed Tron because Tron sided with the ISOs and Dyson hated the ISOs because the ISOs damaged his face.
Oh, I forget that's
Yeah.
Scarface guy.
Yeah. It delves a lot into the ISO program conflict as well. At this point in the show, like in the present of the show, the ISOs have already been mostly exterminated, but we see a lot of flashbacks about the ISO conflict and the ISO war. It's quite interesting. But, you know, he hated the ISOs so much that he was willing to betray Tron and Flynn. And what Dyson does is that Dyson is commanded by Clue to reprogram and repurpose all the programs. So what they do is that they put these programs in extraction chambers to have their code extracted, and then they get repurposed into soldiers for Clue. Which is why...
Which is touched upon in the movie.
Yeah, which is why in the movie you see that there's programs who have more personality and are more independent. Meanwhile, the ones that work for Clue are more computer-like. They're more obedient. Like, they're basically brainwashed. And they were doing that with Tron, specifically. They were doing that with Tron. But Dyson extracted Tron from his repurposing chamber before he could get repurposed, because he wanted Tron to join Clue willingly.
No.
Yeah, he wanted Tron to join Clue willingly, but Tron was unwilling to join Clue. So what Dyson did is that he rewrote Tron's code to make him dependent on energy, and then he was going to ship him off away to a lab without telling Clue. But then the ship, the recognizer ship, the one that looks like a big musical note, crashed down because of another program named Cyrus who flipped sides. And Cyrus rescued Tron. And then Cyrus turns evil. Cyrus is played by Aaron Paul, so that makes sense. But that's a whole other thing. But that's how Tron survived, because this other program called Cyrus overcame his repurposing and saved Tron. Now, since the show only lasted one season, we never see how Tron becomes Rinsler, and it's very clear that that's what the show was leading to. But based on what we see in the first season, it's very clear that eventually what happened was that Clue got his hands on Tron and eventually did repurpose him. Gave him a new code.
Brainwashing him.
Yeah, brainwashed him. So that's what happened to Tron. Now, as for Clue, so like I said, after I finished the cartoon, I read Tron Betrayal. And that comic offered so much context for this movie. So much context. Primarily regarding the ISOs and their role in Clue's betrayal. Which, once again, they barely touch on the ISOs in this movie, and they play a major factor in why Clue betrayed Tron. I still think Clue is amazing in this movie. He's an amazing villain. Jeff Bridges does a great job acting him out. And it's one of the few things in this movie that I don't feel like needs supplementary content. Like, you can understand based on the context of this movie that Clue felt betrayed by his creator because his creator chose imperfection over design. Like, you can just tell that from this movie, from the context given in this movie. But the comic does offer more context to Clue's betrayal. We don't necessarily need that context, but it does offer more context, and it is nice. So what happened is that as soon as Flynn created this new grid and brought Tron over and created Clue, the new grid started getting overrun by grid bugs, which you actually see in the original Tron. You see grid bugs in the original Tron. It started getting overrun by them, and they were damaging the system. And apparently they established in the comic that grid bugs are attracted to uncertainty, which makes sense, because in a computer, everything is structured, everything is intended. Grid bugs are attracted to uncertainty by nature. So this was causing a problem in the system. It was causing Clue a lot of problems. But at the same time, in the real world, Kevin Flynn was dealing with his own issues. His wife died. He had to raise his son by himself, kind of by himself, because he had the grandparents, obviously. And he also had to run NCOM by himself. And the board never listened to him because Kevin Flynn is basically a hippie. He just happens to be a computer genius.
Which I love that they wrote a bit of Jeff Bridges into that.
Yeah.
Especially channeling that dudism of his.
Yeah, and it's played well in the original movie as well, the fact that he is a guy. And also, what he says in the comic makes sense, because in the comic, he says specifically that NCOM should not expand into China, because China is a dictatorship. They should expand into India, which has the same population, but is a democracy, which is interesting. But eventually, he steps away from NCOM. He still maintains his majority shares, but he steps away from NCOM as the CEO to raise his son and focus on building the grid. Meanwhile, as this is happening, he's spending too much time away from the grid, and Clue is getting more and more frustrated. And this is when the ISOs come into being. And the comic establishes, and this is actually really good, because they never explain this in the movie. Because let me ask you, they say in the movie that the ISOs came from nowhere, that the grid created them, and then Clue destroys them all, and Quorra is the last one. Did you ever wonder to yourself, why didn't the system just create more?
No, but now that you bring it up, why didn't they create more?
The comic answers that. And to be fair, the movie doesn't pose that question, so of course you wouldn't think of it. I didn't think of it until I read the comic, but after I read it, I was like, that makes perfect sense. So they established in the comic that the ISOs were specifically born out of the Sea of Simulation, which is the largest ocean in the grid. They were born out of the sea. They just crawled out of it. And they chose their own names because they were sophisticated enough to do that. They chose their own names. And their programming was immensely complex. And this is when Flynn becomes enamored by them. He becomes excited by them. And it's hinted at in the comic that Clue becomes jealous. And as Flynn is taking his long visits away from the grid back into the real world, Clue is left to manage this growing population of programs. And like all these programs were not designed by the system. So Clue has no idea how to manage them properly. Because every other program in the grid was designed by Flynn, and they were designed for a purpose. So they can just be organized. It's like, okay, you're a mechanic, you're an aviator, you're an architect, whatever. The ISOs came from nowhere, and they choose their own names, they choose their own roles. They basically have free will. So they don't fit into Clue's
grand vision
Clue's
of schemes.
Yeah, grand vision of perfection. They don't fit into like that. So it frustrates him. Like, that frustrates Clue, the fact that the ISOs keep on disrupting his plans for the grid because of their own decision-making. And on top of that, the grid bug infestation actually increases after the ISOs show up. And the comic doesn't make it explicit. In fact, Tron, as a character, argues against this in the comic. But the comic implies that because the grid bugs are attracted to uncertainty, that they're appearing more and more because of the ISOs existing and growing in population. So this uncertainty has created a lot of animosity. So Clue starts subtly introducing ways to kill off the ISOs. First off, what he does is that he changes the games. In Flynn's versions of the games, because Flynn remembered the old system and how the games were used to kill programs. In his new version of the system, he wants the games because they're fun, but he doesn't want them to be lethal. So the games, like Disc Wars and Light Cycle Run, they're all non-lethal. That way programs don't get de-rezzed. But Clue's versions of the games are lethal. After Flynn is gone for a long enough amount of time, Clue makes the games lethal, and he does that as a way to start managing the ISO population. And it's actually quite funny, because there's a subtle allusion to this in the movie. Because if you remember
games.
The rectified games. And if you remember in the prologue of the movie, when you see the toys of the Disc Warriors, you see one program throwing a disc at another, but that program isn't getting de-rezzed. He's falling back, but the toy is intact. The toy isn't getting de-rezzed. The toy's just been defeated. And like, that shot is recreated in the first Disc Wars fight that we see in the movie. That shot of the toy is recreated with actual programs, but the program actually does get de-rezzed. Yeah, that's because Flynn's versions of the game, which is what he based the toy on, were non-lethal. Meanwhile, Clue's are. So it's an interesting thing. But that's one thing that Clue does. And then what Clue does after that is that he sets up his own terrorist group. He has some of his generals act as terrorists, bombing different ISO districts across the grid. Because the ISOs have their own cities and districts, like Jewish ghettos. And he starts having his own men impersonate terrorists to bomb them. And the way the comic ends before the epilogue, because the epilogue just shows Clue betraying Flynn and Tron. But before the comic ends, before that epilogue starts, we see one final terrorist act of Clue's men poisoning the Sea of Simulation, which is where all the ISOs come from. They poison the sea with a virus so no more ISOs can be born.
That's a good twist.
Yeah.
And basically, the Tron Evolution games were pretty much about that, the sudden disappearance of the ISOs. And at the very start of the game, Ken Flynn's like, oh my god. He does his video journal, and he's like, I've discovered the ISOs, I'm going to investigate them. It's just, it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
and you're investigating all that, and then you just end up saving Quorra and die at the very end.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, which does remind me, Quorra does appear in Tron Uprising, and she is voiced by Olivia Wilde. She appears in one episode in the flashback. It's during the ISO wars. Her and a friend are trying to escape, imminent death. But yeah, no, that's what happened with the ISOs. No more ISOs could be created because where they came from, the Sea of Simulation was poisoned with a virus.
And the thing is, they have in the movie they talk about sea simulation quite a few times, but
Mm-hmm.
giving it, when you give something a name, there's something important. If
Yep.
there were the sea, they would have just been like, oh, it's just the ocean, the sea. But the sea of simulation, that's such a, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's the birthplace of the ISOs.
Yeah, it's simulated life. It's so incredibly interesting. But yeah, that's the big questions of this movie. How the ISOs came into being and how they were destroyed, what role that they played in Clue's betrayal of Flynn and Tron, and then the cartoon answers how the rebellion started and kind of what happened to Tron. Like, you can assume what happened to Tron based on the one season we got, even though we never see it. But yeah, that's how that answers that. And another thing I wanted to bring up about the cartoon Tron Uprising, it was a prequel to Tron Legacy, but it also had a lot of narrative and visual inspirations from the original Tron. For instance, all the characters in the cartoon, they had either the black or white suits with the grid lines on them. They had either the black or white suits, but their skin tones were all grayscale, black and white, to reference the original movie. But their hair colors were actual color. So they blended together the aesthetics of both, which was interesting. You see in the flashback scenes that a lot of the programs wear hockey helmets, which is what they wore in the original movie. You see the appearance of a bit, which is a program companion that you see in the original movie. It says, yes, yes,
No.
no, no. You see that in the cartoon. A lot of Clue's enforcers look like the heavily padded MCP enforcers, the ones that are like really top heavy, like 40k soldiers. Like, there's a lot of like visual and narrative references to that original movie, which is interesting and it's nice. But yeah, that's the expanded content. Moving back to Tron Legacy, like I was saying earlier, it does what every good Legacy sequel should do. It expands on the ideas, it expands on the themes, it updates a lot of the sort of lamer qualities of the original Tron. Because in the original Tron, the identity discs are literally frisbees. Like, that's not a joke. They're just frisbees, and they like lighted them up in post. Like, that's what they are. They're literally frisbees. Like,
I
and
even
the
had a
suits that they
friend
wore.
who in Kingdom Hearts they were playing it and their sister walked in and they're like, did that guy just get killed by a frisbee?
Yes, like they shoot frisbees at each other in the original movie. Like I said, they're wearing hockey helmets, like actual hockey helmets, and a lot of padding. The suits that they're wearing are spandex, and they literally just have Sharpie drawn on them. Like all the light lines in the original Tron movie are Sharpie lines that they just colored in post. That's not a joke. So they modernized all that. It looks good. And also, like I said, the movie brings you in. It's so visually gorgeous. Like, Tron Legacy, even though it's not one of my favorites, it's not even in my top 50. Even though it's not one of my favorites, it's probably one of the most visually compelling movies I've ever seen. It's like the production design is so impeccable. It is so gorgeous to look at. Like, this and Amelie are probably the two prettiest movies I've ever seen. The only difference is that, unlike Amelie, I actually like Tron Legacy.
I forgot that you hate Amelie.
I do hate Amelie so much. So much. It's a pretty movie, though, but I hate it. I don't hate Tron Legacy, though. I really like it. But I don't love it as much as I used to because, it does have shallow world building. And also, this is kind of an interesting thing that I noticed with the movie. Sam is the main character, and I think Sam is a good character. And, he's well played by Garrett Hedlund. Garrett Hedlund does a great job in the sort of fish out of water role. You buy the emotional issues that he has with his dad. He's really compelling at the beginning of the movie when he's in the real world. But once he gets to the grid, it feels like the presentation of the grid, the presentation of this world, kind of overshadows him and his character. Like, it doesn't overshadow Quorra. It certainly doesn't overshadow Clue or Flynn. It just feels like Sam's character gets overshadowed by the world that he's in. So it makes his character feel less compelling than he actually is. I think that's an issue with the movie. I still love it, and I still think Sam is a very compelling protagonist. But that's just an issue I noticed. I
I
don't
think
have
my
much.
biggest
What?
issue is just I think my biggest issue is just that world building. Like, we have so much, information lore that explains a lot. And of course we get exposition dump in the movie, but it's like, oh, if you want to find out, read the comic, play the game, watch the cartoon series.
It's like no, like you could have made the movie a little longer to actually explore these ideas more adequately, or you could have saved them from the movie and just focused on one thing or two things at most. Like the movie's a little too ambitious, and this also goes into another problem. The original Tron is too slow. It's kind of a boring movie. This one is way too quick. Like there's only one sequence in the whole movie that actually feels like it has breathing room. It's when they're on the Solar Sailor, and that's
But
actually my
that's the like relaxing moment. Hell, even the soundtrack is, after we get fall, it's just like, when they fall from the elevator in End of Line, the soundtrack goes with all this like bass heavy from with the orchestra going it's just intense. Then we go to see simulation. It's just or sorry, that's Solar Fair. Just a calm, traditional Daft Punk. It's very much like in their album Discovery, Veritas Quo.
yeah. It's so relaxing, and those sequences on the Solar Sailor are some of my favorite in the movie. And it's probably the most overt like plot beat rip from the original movie. But they're my favorite moments in the movie because they're slow and because you get time to breathe and sit with the characters. You have conversations between Sam and Kevin, father and son finally getting time to actually reunite and be comfortable. It's not like a stiff interaction the way like they had at dinner. And then you have that lovely conversation between Quorra and Sam, which develops their romantic will they won't they tension, which is actually pretty well done in this movie. Like those are my favorite sequences in the movie because you actually get time to breathe. This movie does not have a lot of breathing room. It's just thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And like when they go to Zeus's nightclub, the End of Line Club, like I love that scene. I love that sequence. It's kind of awkward in the narrative. It feels like they just go there that way they can go back to the grid because the grid is beautiful.
Yeah, I was because when the movie came out, Disney made a promotional a promotional website that would explore the grid, and it's like the farthest point you could explore with the End of Line Club. Which you would think, oh, is that where they go to the portal? It's like, no, it's just a nightclub. It's like, why? The way it's positioned, it seems like that's what takes you straight to the portal. So it's like, why? Just why? But
I don't know, man.
it brought a great like music video scene.
Oh no, it's an amazing music video. Like I said, Tron Legacy is the best music video of all time. But it's like, why did you go here? You want a cool grid scene with a bunch of extras that were all lit up. It's a poorly paced film, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the movie takes place over the course of 8 hours. Like the fact that you have that ticking clock is meant to increase the pacing. Like that's something that happens in fiction when you establish a ticking clock in a narrative. Like everything just moves quickly. Like there's a movie. It's one of my favorite action films. It's called Crank. It stars Jason Statham. It was directed by Brian Taylor and Mark Neveldine. And in that movie, the movie's about Jason Statham getting poisoned with a toxin that will kill him if his adrenaline levels drop. So the entire movie, literally the entire movie, he's just running. That's not a joke. Like he's running throughout the entire movie, stealing like EpiPens to increase his adrenaline, having sex in the middle of Chinatown to keep his adrenaline up. Like it's just a movie constantly in motion. It takes place over the course of like half a day.
This sounds
It's a
like a
very
parody of every like movie made for like a man's man.
well, it kind of is, and I love it. It's one of my favorite action films. But it's a very quick-paced film, and it's meant to be quick-paced. It's meant to be just a guy running for his life because if he stops for even a moment, his heart will stop and he will die. It's a ticking clock in the narrative, and it's intentional. But that's what happens in a narrative when you introduce a ticking clock. It quickens the pacing, and that can be good if you're intending to do that. But with a movie like this that has so many world-building elements and so many concepts that you have to think about, you aren't going to get it on the first view. You're not even going to get it on the first couple of views. And even then, like I said, there's supplementary content to fill in the gaps for things that are missing in the movie. I think that is a problem with the film, like the pacing. It's a little too ambitious and a little too quick. It has literally the exact opposite problem of the original movie, which is too slow and takes too much time on everything.
It's really funny you say that because in high school, my band instructor, when we were not playing music and just be a free day, he would play movies. One day I walk in and he's playing Tron Legacy at the very end, and I'm like, "Hey, Carmona, would you ever want there to be a sequel to this movie?" And he's like, "I'll tell you after the movie ends," because he was showing us right at the end of line club scene.
Hmm.
Finally, ending happening. Like, and to answer your question, only if they fix the pacing.
Yeah,
And it's really funny because I agree. Yeah, it's just it's rushed, but it's also slowed down.
yeah, it's really odd, and hopefully
And one
Tron
of
Ares doesn't
well,
do that.
we'll see.
Yeah. What were we
One of
saying?
my like peeves when it comes to like pacing of a movie, and it's always like, oh, this is a crazy wicked thing, and it's like it don't happen in the span of like 8 hours. Like it has to be really well done pacing wise to make me believe it was done in such a short amount of time. Like even Jurassic Park, my favorite movie. How long does that whole movie take? Maybe like 3 days, right?
Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. And they have time to slow down. It's like in life, when you're doing something for 2 hours, like let's imagine would they make a story about you going to the airport. Are those 2 hours just like, oh, it's all pure, like, oh, we're gonna just take it and like, no, you're rushed, you're going to security, you're going that it's not calm until the very end.
Yeah, and that would make sense if you were telling a story in that. But this is a big world that this movie takes place in, and it's like we need a little more time to explore. Can you make the ticking clock like a couple days, please? Please.
It's a shame this movie didn't get the Avatar treatment and get greenlit for 5 sequels.
All right, Avatar: Fire and Ash, December. Woo! I actually am looking forward to that. I'm actually like not
I
sure. I
am
don't think it's gonna
too.
be good, but I don't know what it is. James Cameron just has magic over people.
It does. As much as I love to joke about like we don't need 5 Avatar sequels, and the first one came out a little
To
more
that,
than this. Well, it's just like it's just like all right, it's an entertaining like zeitgeist movie. Like it's a movie you watched in the era, and like if you didn't watch it, like you didn't live the era.
I mean, I like the first one. Like the first one is incredibly derivative, obviously, as I mentioned earlier. But I like it. I think it's actually a good movie. I mean, James Cameron knows what he's doing. He's a filmmaker that knows what he's doing. He's always known what he's doing. But Avatar 2, it was just so self-indulgent and so nothing. And a third of the movie is just them swimming in the water, which I found personally insulting
If you
because I
don't know how to
cannot
swim,
swim.
Ben,
Can't swim. But but I don't know what it is. I'm still looking forward to Fire and Ash. It's odd. Anyway, we should probably wrap this up soon. So let me just
we
read off
should.
my list of things here. I have a list here. I want to see if there's anything I forgot. Let's see. No, 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 no,
I'm just imagining a bit reading off, and it's like no, yes,
no, no. I talked a lot. I talked about a lot of the things I wanted to talk about.
great.
Um, yep. No. Yeah, no. No. Do, 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 do. No. Yep. I already talked about In Time extensively. I love In Time. I should do a review on In Time at some point.
I'm
Um,
surprised you have it already.
I love that movie, but like it's one of those things which I love it so much. I feel like I wouldn't give it a fair shake, and I definitely need to give it a fair shake. Um, let's see. No. Oh, this is a question I
Oh,
actually had. Okay. This is a
go.
question I had about this world, and this extends to the extended media as well, because as far as I can tell, they don't answer this in the extended media as well at all. Where does Flynn get his food? Because they had a pig at dinner.
Uh, uh, let's get even further than that. What are they drinking?
Yeah, like it's established in the original movie that water in the digital world is energy. That's what it is. It's energy. And they also reaffirm that in the cartoon Tron Uprising. Like water is energy. Like they call it water in the cartoon, but it is still energy. And it's the sea of simulation. It's digital. How does he get nutrients from that?
And even then, the sea simulation implies, it's not the lake or the river simulation, the sea.
It's the
So are they not,
sea.
is that water not drinkable?
Well, no, because it was poisoned with a virus.
Well, before that,
Before that, I don't
like,
know. Yeah.
like, is it,
So
is it salty energy? Is it like, well, I mean, you can't drink it, but it will flow, it will power the system.
yeah.
So
So
yeah, it's one
that's
thing. It's like they're eating. They have apples. They have a whole spread. They're at a bar. They're clearly getting, drunk.
Actually, does Flynn write the code for the food? Because we see in the original Tron, before Flynn gets put into the computer, they do the laser test, the Shiva laser test, on an orange. And the orange's atoms are broken down into code and transmuted digitally. So is he just writing code that perfectly matches the nutrients that he needs to live?
Which again, it's like,
yeah. Well, also, like, how would that work? Because users can bleed in the system. Programs get derez, they turn into cubes, but users bleed. We see Sam bleed in the movie. So how is he getting nutrients from fake food that he writes the code for? That's just a huge question I had in this movie. And the movie doesn't care. And they don't answer it anywhere.
It's interesting you mentioned that, he bleeds. I'm looking at the rating on the back here, and it's PG. So I'm surprised it didn't get a PG-13 because, there's blood, you guys. We can't show that to kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a hard PG, but it's a PG. In fact, I think I saw this movie on Disney XD all the time. They didn't have to edit a lot. But yeah, that's one question I had. Where's you guys' food? That just didn't make sense. Here's another question I had, and that I have not seen this answered anywhere. There might be an answer somewhere in a comic book or something. I've not seen it answered anywhere. What is the currency on the grid?
Oh, bits.
It's bits?
Yes.
You're sure about that?
So there's a recent game called Tron Runner, and to upgrade your thing, you would get something called bits.
Well, bits are program companions. We established that in the first movie. They're program companions. So do you just get more They're basically like Skeets from Booster Gold. He has a little buddy Skeets.
Yes, I'm familiar.
Yeah, that's what they are. So are they different bits? Are they just called bits? I'm confused.
I think they're just called bits. Yeah, there we go. I'm looking at the listing on PlayStation, and there's, of course, pay to win. Tron Runner 5,000 bit pack. Let's see.
Huh.
And then for Evolution, yeah, bits. They're just called bits.
That's crazy. That's really crazy, man.
It's like calling something. It's like, our currency is the dollar, and then we get a creature called the buck. Like, wait, isn't a buck what you spend? Yeah, but it's also our companion.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. I just have
that
question.
It begs the question: where do they get their money from? Like, here, obviously, we have a government and it's centralized. Like, is it just, they mine it and it's now their money, or?
Well, you can mine energy in the grid. They established that in the cartoon Tron Uprising. You can mine energy. So I assume it's like a resource. Like, you can just extract raw code and then turn it into bits. That's what I'm assuming. But I asked what the currency is because they don't establish it at all in this movie. And the character Zeus is a broker, and he makes a deal with Clue. But the deal isn't for money, it's for control of Tron City. And also in Tron Uprising, there's an episode where the villain Tesla is putting up a bounty on the renegade, Beck's character, Elijah Wood's character. But the bounty isn't for money. He's giving away a roadster. He's giving away a light roadster, basically a free car. And apparently it's the only car on the grid that can outrun a light jet. But he's giving away a car. It's not a fiscal bounty. He's just giving away a free car. So I was just thinking to myself while I was watching that cartoon and this movie and reading the comic, what is the currency? And also, in the cartoon, Beck has a job. He works at a mechanic garage repairing light cycles. And in the show, they established, it's like, Beck, you're late all the time. Abel's going to fire you. Because his boss's name is Abel, who's voiced by the dad from Family Matters, Reginald something. Yeah, he was also the cop in Die Hard, the cop who shot a kid.
Whoa, no way.
Yeah, that's him. He's in the cartoon. He plays Beck's boss. He's the boss of the garage. But and it's revealed later in the show that he actually knows Tron personally. But anyway, they establish in the show, it's like, oh, Beck, you're late all the time. Abel's going to fire you. It's like, what's your incentive to stay? Do you get paid? Do you work for room and board? Do you work for room and board? I don't know. What's the economy?
I mean, there's clearly, homelessness in this world, because remember, there's a vagrant that Flynn trades his dad's life cycle for.
That's true. So there has to be some sort of economic system, and you're telling me that their currency is bits. So I guess that makes sense, but I don't know. I wish it was more clearly defined, and that goes back into the shallow world building of this film.
Again, it's wait, if Flynn created this grid to be perfect, what is he doing about the homelessness
Exactly.
and the economy?
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things, I
Um,
guess, that where he steps away and then it's like he comes back like, "Wait, you guys have a whole functioning bartering system? I only stepped away for a day, guys."
it's incredibly interesting. Yeah, but I just want to bring that up. Let's see what else is here. Oh, this is something that relates to the pacing and the world building. The fact that the film has a lack of momentum. This film tries to build up this epic scope of Clue's tyranny and the threat that he poses to the real world, but because of the pacing and because of the lack of proper world building, it doesn't feel like there's an actual momentum to the threat of Clue, even though he's a good villain. Like, these elements are established, but it doesn't feel like they're built up to properly, you know? It doesn't feel like he as a threat is built up properly. Like, the MCP in the original film is established right away as a dictatorial threat, and he has consumed hundreds of programs to expand himself. And he's gotten so big that he's even thinking about
He's
like consuming entire government
the
computing systems.
Kremlin and the Pentagon, and it's like,
Yeah,
whoa.
yeah,
Meanwhile,
exactly.
Clue is just like, oh, I'm just self. Well, even in the movie, they talk about like Clue can't really access the outside without Flynn,
Yeah,
and I guess
exactly.
that's a like safety that Flynn had created. So he's like, I don't want Flynn to be taking over and like
Well, yeah,
doing
he
what
had
the
to go.
MCP did.
Yeah, exactly. And he had to go through a pager to get a message out. And they established that in the comic as well, Tron Betrayal, the fact that Flynn told all the programs that it was impossible to communicate to the outside world. Although that brings me to another point. You know, the MCP is able to expand himself and grow beyond the confines of his system, being the NCOM system, because he keeps on breaking out into other corporations and stealing their programs to consume into himself. But that was the old system. Flynn creates a new system and a new grid, which implies that Tron could be a multiverse. Like the franchise could be a multiverse. That every computer could have its own grid and its own programs living in it. Like, that's fundamentally an interesting concept because, like they say in the movie, that Flynn took Tron from the old system to this new system. So that implies that those systems are separate, which means that
Right.
they're different worlds because they're designed differently.
And one thing I was thinking too was, did he pretty much just copy Tron, or did he just like, I'm hard pulling you out of this old grid, and you're coming in here now. You only exist in this context, so I'm just beaming you out of this thing.
I'm assuming he just brought Tron out on like a floppy disk or something.
Yeah, like it's like, all right, I'm copying the Tron program. Like, can you imagine Flynn goes to Alan and like, hey, can I get a copy of Tron and put it in my program? And he's like, sure.
Yeah, so there's multiple Trons. Oh, maybe that's how they'll put Tron in this new movie, Tron Ares.
Well, Bruce Boxleitner said that he was not brought it back to film this movie, but he's still supporting it because he wants his story to conclude in the third for Tron Legacy.
You see, you say that, but a lot of actors say the same thing. It's like I'm not involved in this movie. I've
Harrison
never been.
Ford,
Yep, and they're in the
best
movie.
example. He's like,
Yep,
what the is a Star Wars? I'm not gonna be in this one. I got paid off to never come back. Comes
yep,
back in this surprising scene.
yep. That's something. Oh, here's another question I had. Where is Yori? Cindy Morgan's character
Where
from the original.
where is
Yeah,
everyone from the previous? Like, did you ever watch the behind the scenes, or was it only a Blu-ray exclusive? The next day Flynn lives.
I did watch that actually. I
Yeah,
did watch
and
that.
one character did they forget? Ram.
Ram died in the first movie. He got
And yet
derezzed.
the creator shows up
Mm-hmm.
in Flynn Lives.
Yeah, which I actually wanted to bring up. So in the original Tron, every program has a real life counterpart. Alan Bradley is Tron, Yori is Laura, they see Ed Dillinger is Sark and also the MCP. You know, Flynn is Clue. Everyone has their own counterpart. And Ram had a counterpart in the real world. He was the popcorn coworker, the one who asked for popcorn from Alan. And the real life character doesn't have a name in the movie, but he was given a name in Flynn Lives, which was Roy Kleinberg, which is interesting. He wasn't given a name in the original, but he was given a name, and it was the same actor, Dan Shore. But yeah, I did watch Tron the next day. And also, funny thing with Flynn Lives, if you notice the shirt that says Flynn Lives that Sam Flynn wears at the end of that short, Tron the next day, it's made of lines, you know, like light cycle lines. They had that exact same art style in Tron Uprising because there's an episode where a bunch of vandals are spray painting Argon with Tron libs, and it's the exact same font and formatting with all the lines. It's pretty interesting, and this is going to be a nightmare to edit.
2 hour 40 minute. We're about to reach Lawrence of Arabia levels of duration.
I'm making it work, man. I'm making it work. We'll wrap up soon, but
No problem.
yeah, no, I'm just wondering where Yori is. Yeah, I'm just wondering where Yori is because Rand was de-resed in the first film.
The previous. In fact, let's take it a step further. Where is Ed Dillinger Sr.? The actor, unfortunately, passed away recently, so we're probably not going to see him in any upcoming media.
Yeah,
but
I would like to see a version of Sark in this movie.
In Flynn Lives, they have a whole scene where Ed Dillinger Jr. is talking to his father. Ed Dillinger's like, "Hey, Dad, did you see this? Just text, whatever." And then you hear, "Yes, it is troubling. We shall deal with it. End of line."
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It would have been awesome if, you know how Clue has, like, a lackey in this movie? He's wearing, like, a weird face shield mohawk thing.
Yep.
He kind of looks like
He's played by this famous English actor.
And he, like, turns code at the end. He's like, long live the users and then death to the users, and then Clue de-reses him.
Yep.
That should have been Cillian Murphy.
That would have been great.
That should have been Cillian Murphy. Imagine Dillinger serving Clue. Like, that'd be Dillinger serving Flynn. That should have been Cillian Murphy. But, yeah, no, where is Ed Sr.? Where's a lot of... The reason I'm asking about Yori specifically is because even though she's not a super well-written character in the original film, she is a substantial character. She's on the poster for the movie, for God's sake.
That shows up in this movie.
Yeah, they reenact the poster from the original. And they show the original poster as well in the form of, like, a fake video game that exists in the movie. So, like, where is Yori? And I'm assuming that there's probably some behind-the-scenes stuff. Maybe Cindy Morgan didn't want to come back. I don't know. But that's just, where is he? Where is she? I don't know. Let's see. What else do I have written here? The fact that the End of Line Club is obviously a reference to, what the MCP would say. Yeah, End of Line. And, Clue says that as he's walking out of the club. End of line, man.
End of line, man.
Yep.
Gotta throw in Jeff Bridges' dudism.
Yep. Which reminds me, speaking of his dudisms. So, in the original Tron, and Steven Lisberger talks about this in the commentary for the original movie, when Jeff Bridges is playing Clue, he has more of a monotone computer voice when he's playing Clue. But he drops that computer voice when Clue gets captured by the MCP and de-resed. He just talks like a normal guy. Which, that was just an acting decision Jeff Bridges made. He decided to act like a computer, and then when the computer character got captured, he acts like just a normal guy who's afraid of dying. Which is an interesting acting decision. But this is something I noticed after reading the comic Tron Betrayal. In Tron Betrayal, Clue is a very technical character because he's made to design the perfect system. And he brings up several times in the comic how he doesn't understand Flynn's idioms or his mannerisms or his laid-back nature because he's very stuck up. He's trying to design the perfect system. But Clue in the movie is comfortable using idioms and is very casual in his language, much like the original Tron. The original Tron has a very casual dialogue set, considering that's a fantasy movie, basically, in a computer. He's very comfortable and casual with his language, despite being a dictator. And that is obviously Jeff Bridges' persona rubbing off on the character. But it's the same thing with Clue in the original. Clue 1.0 was spick and span and proper until he wasn't. Until he was brought to the MCP to die. Clue 2.0 was a spick and span and proper until he became a dictator. Then he started to relax. And it's the same thing, which I thought was funny.
It's poetry.
It's poetry. It rhymes. George Lucas, gotta love him. Which, obviously Star Wars had a huge inspiration on Tron. They even have a lightsaber in this movie. Like, Quorra holds one up at the end.
It's funny because when they announced this and you get the baton with the character, I'm like, do they all get their own individual lightsaber on top of the discs that they have in the back? And no, it's just so that they have a reason to ride on their bikes.
Exactly. I love it. Let's see. What else do I have written here? The film is edited together very well. There's a lot of great transition shots in this movie, bouncing back and forth between characters in a way that isn't disorienting. It's very well done. especially at the ending when they go from the portal to the real world and it transitions to the computer, the backlight of the computer. Like that's just an amazing transition. The movie's edited very well. The pacing is off, but it's edited very well. Let's see. When Quorra, Sam, and Kevin steal the light jet, and Quorra's flying it away, Kevin Flynn says it's all on the wrist, which I'm pretty sure he said in the first movie. I think he says that after he beats his high score in Space Paranoids.
He
I
does. It's
think.
funny because you say that because Tron Ares just released a trailer that ties in all three movies in the same trailer. And after he beats the record, he says, "It's all in the wrist." So when I watched the movie and he's like, "It's all in the wrist, Quorra," I was just like, "Oh, it's been there since day one."
Yeah, a lot of things baked in from the beginning, like we were saying. Yeah, I think that's I think that's everything I had. So that's pretty much all I had to say on Tron Legacy. Do you have any thoughts? Any final thoughts, Ernesto?
Gosh, man, what don't I have thoughts on? I mean, these past 2 hours and 48 minutes that we've been talking, you have me looking at, just looking at the record and thinking about how this possibly could be their Daft Punk's best work. Looking at, my life cycle and my action figure, even the movies, and I'm just like, man, like this movie really has a huge impact in terms of like just what it tried to present itself. How, in a sense, we were robbed of what it could have been, but I'm happy of what we have in the end.
Oh yeah. Like, for better or worse, I really enjoy this movie. I don't, like I said, I don't love it the way I used to, but it does hold a special place in my heart. It's not one of my favorites, but I have a lot of admiration for it. It's a beautiful movie to look at. Much like the original Tron, there's nothing quite like it visually. It's just there's so much about this movie. If I was going to describe this movie in any way, I would say that it is it is boundless potential that was unfortunately confined to a 2 hour like a 2 hour viewing block. Like there's just so much to explore with this concept and with this world, and it is really a sin that there's not more content surrounding this concept.
So we'll just see how Ares holds up. I'm, I always tell you, I'm cautiously optimistic about everything. And when it comes to like maybe especially like, movie that I love, like Jurassic Park, I always have lived by the mentality of I have zero expectation that way. Either I don't have my expectations ruined or it's a pleasant surprise at the very lowest of good.
You're right, man. You're right, man. I wish I had that same mindset because, like I said, I enjoyed Tron Legacy. This was one of my favorites for a long time. I saw it so many times when I was in my teens. And when I heard that they were finally making this, I was like, it is one of my most anticipated movies of this year. And I'm like, the more I see of it, the less impressed I get. And I'm like, this has to be good, man. I mean, I'm not sure if you ever saw this. There was a concept trailer released years ago after Tron Legacy came out. I don't even know if it was official or not, but it was.
I think it was a fan made trailer.
Yeah, I got that vibe, but it was a light cycle getting scanned in the real world and a couple riding it after like a university lecture, and then you see it's either Sark or the MCE get scanned in. Yeah, it's Sark gets scanned in.
I remember watching that and I'm like, oh, and then I watch, the credits and I'm like, oh, it's clearly a fan made project. I at one point thought it was actually a college project.
Right, because it starts to end at college.
And it was like, I'm like, because you and I both went to Long Beach State. I'm just like, man, I wish someone at Long Beach did something as cool as this. Which, granted, a lot of our classmates and alumni have done good projects. I mean, but it's just like I wish they did something that was like, hey, I can make something original, but I also wish I could show like the skill I have to make this film, but also, how I could expand on something that's already pre-established.
I mean, there's always Steven Spielberg in the Return to Film School.
Oh, that one's great. That one's goated.
I have it right here on DVD.
Yes.
Yeah,
Did you watch the sequel?
Oh yeah, Star Trek Wars, right?
Yep.
I haven't seen the sequel. I should watch the sequel. Funny thing, I know the director of this, Josie Ho.
Yes.
I ran into her yesterday, like right after you. Because
It's
you and I
funny
ran
because
into
I've
each
been
other.
trying to meet them for a good minute. I'm just like, oh,
Yeah, she was there yesterday. Like I think it was like half an hour after I ran into you, because you and I ran into each other at like Los Angeles
LA
Comic Con
Comic
yesterday.
Con.
Yeah, LA Comic Con, and I ran into her like right after. Like
That's
I
funny.
met her. Yeah, I met her a couple years ago because she had a 10-year anniversary screening of Steven Spielberg and the Return to Film School. I went to it.
Can't believe it's
Yeah,
already been more than 10 years. We were in high school when that released.
yeah,
And
it's so fun.
the Star Trek Wars released when I was in a senior going to college. In fact, I was told by it via a high school administrator who saw I was shooting my application for film school.
I need to watch that. I need to watch Star Trek Wars because it is the same guy that she got to play George Lucas in Steven Spielberg and the Return to Film School. But it's so
And in
funny.
fact, it's the same production team too. It's the same
It is.
composer, lighting, and I'm just like, oh wow, they really stuck around together. I hope they're doing fine. I mean, I don't think I ever knew obviously I've never met Josie. I don't know what they do nowadays.
She's still making stuff as far as I know. And it's so funny because like she made that movie in 2013. That was 10 years after Spielberg graduated from our alma mater. And then I go to the 10-year anniversary screening after that. It's just it's poetry. It rhymes. But yeah, Tron Legacy. I think that's about everything. I think you think that's about everything. I
It
think that's
should.
about it.
I think it is. I don't
We
want it to
said
be about everything, but it has to end at some point. There has to be a disconnect at some point.
yeah, we're about to hit 3 hours, and I'm going to have a bad time editing this, and I'm
And
going to
I
have
know
to get.
you will have fun.
I will have
Has
fun.
this been the longest interview you've done for any of your guest interviews?
Yes and no, because
Oh, good.
technically speaking,
Nicole was two-parter.
yeah, Nicole was a two-parter. So yes and no.
I don't think you're going to do this in
Maybe
two parts either.
I will make it work, man. Watch Tron Legacy. It's good. It's underrated. People don't appreciate the movie enough. It's not perfect. It has problems, but watch Tron Legacy. It's good. It's pure aura, bro. It's pure aesthetic.
And watch Tron
It's
Ares so we can finally get a conclusion to Legacy's story.
please. I hope it is. I hope it is actually a sequel to Legacy, and not just
Oh,
a way to
actually,
capture. Yeah, what?
one last thing I did want to mention before. We didn't really touch much about the music. We touched about how it could be a good music video, but
Oh yeah, we you're right. We talked about it. We didn't talk extensively about Daft Punk's score in this movie. Like we
just
should have
Daft
talked about
Punk,
way more.
their score is just. I told you it's the first album I bought on iTunes ever. I have the
Mm-hmm.
vinyl now, and I mean when they did the test footage, it wasn't Daft Punk, but they had a great arpeggio where it was just no 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 no. It sounds very similar to the Stranger Things theme, but just slowed down and toned down.
It's very digital. It's very synth. It complements their style. That is the only thing. Like obviously, like I said, like I keep saying, Tron Ares hasn't come out yet. But that is the only thing I'm disappointed with coming into this new movie. The fact that they couldn't get Daft Punk back together to do this. I'm not against Nine Inch Nails. Like, I've heard snippets of their music for this new movie. It sounds great, and they're a good band. But like, come on, man, Daft Punk.
But I will say, and my colleague from work has, stood up for this. Trent Reznor has only worked on good films, like
Yeah.
Social Network, Challengers. So I'm like, there's a sliver of hope that he didn't just make a banger of a soundtrack with Nine Inch Nails, and it becomes this god awful movie that makes us regret having Jared Leto join it.
Dude, I have been a Jared Leto defender, not of his personal life, obviously, but of his acting. I've been a defender of Jared Leto as an actor because he's given so many good performances over the decades, and the only people who critique his acting, I stress I'm defending him as an actor, not anything else. The only people who critique his acting are people who only watch blockbusters and only saw Morbius and Suicide Squad.
And the internet, for the record,
He's
I'm
done
one of those
so many.
people that he's defended against that I'm like, God, he's just been bombing after bombing. You're like, you need to watch him in more things, dude. And I'm like, do I really have to?
Dude, he was in Fight Club. He was in American Psycho.
I forget about
He was
that.
in Requiem for a Dream. Yeah, he was in Requiem for a Dream. He starred in Requiem for a Dream, which is one of the most depressingly good movies I've ever watched. Like, he was in Panic Room, the David Fincher movie Panic Room. He was
I
in
forgot
Blade
about
Runner
that too.
2049, another
I
legacy
did not
sequel
forget
that
about
is
that.
also better than the original. Yeah, another legacy
Ooh,
sequel that is
really?
also better than the original. Yeah, Blade Runner 2049 is better than Blade Runner. Blade Runner is great. I have a profound amount of respect for Blade Runner. Blade Runner 2049 is better. And it's
It's
also
the
one of my
Tron
favorite films.
legacy of that series. Yeah, it's a legacy sequel, and it uses modern technology, and it has a more cohesive modern story structure.
And it also like takes the same ideas and themes and expands upon them. Like the original Blade Runner is all about what it means to be human, what separates human from replicant, and the answer that the original Blade Runner poses is memories. But 2049 says no, replicants can give birth now. Great,
And more
great
importantly,
movie, better than
internet, it has Jared Leto for
yep.
Ben to defend.
Yes, exactly. Like he does a great job in that movie. He plays
I will
Niander
say he did a great
Wallace.
job in that. That's why I was so excited. And
He
then his few films after that, I'm like, oh no. And then they're like, hey, he's gonna be a part of Tron Ares. Oh no. I'm hoping this movie does well because I would love to see a finale to Tron Legacy.
Yeah, give me actual Tron Ascension. Although Tron Ares has been in talks for a while. I think they started talking about Tron Ares as sort of a soft reboot after Tron Legacy's sequel sort of fell through. And I think
I
Jared
think
Leto
around
was
2015, 2017, which is when
yeah,
I
around
last heard
that.
like, oh, the Tron 3 it's not gonna happen. But they might
Yeah,
talk about rebooting it, and I'm like, oh, please don't reboot it.
yeah. But I think Jared Leto was cast back then. I think he was originally cast as Ares. Which also, in case anyone was curious about why his character is called Ares, first of all, once again, these movies take heavy influence from Greco-Roman history as well as medieval fantasy. There's a character named Zeus in Legacy, but also it's because Ares, based on the trailers, is supposed to be the ultimate warrior, like the god of war, Ares. So there you go. But yeah, Blade Runner 2049 better than Blade Runner. Tron Legacy better than Tron. That's all I have to say on the matter. I will not be taking questions because I've explained it extensively over the course of 3 hours now.
3 hours and 50 seconds.
Yep. Yep.
And listen to the soundtrack, folks. Both of them. They're great. I was If I wasn't going to my trip to Japan, I would have already bought the record for Ares.
Yep. You can go there and convince Disney Tokyo to build a Tron ride.
I guess let's actually close it up now. How would you like to close this up?
I guess that was our review of Tron Legacy. I hope you all enjoyed it. Those of you who chose to watch this 3 hour block, which is my longest video to date. Yay.
Mind you, folks, I'm
Please
very
feel free to
gregarious,
subscribe.
so I apologize, Ben.
No, this is my fault too. This is my fault too for not being concise. You were correct, but this is my fault too. I'm taking dual responsibility with you. But please feel free to subscribe if you're feeling generous. You can also follow me on Instagram or Letterboxd if you want to hear more of my film takes. Ernesto, what do you want the people to follow you?
At Ernesto_LVNA on just about everything.
Yep, Letterboxd, Instagram, etc. That's his handle. I'll put links in the description. But yeah, bye everybody.
End of line, everyone.
End of line.
End of line.